So I'll count it off.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3.
Just let's go.
1, 2, 3, go.
1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Howdy, folks. Welcome back to the rehearsal room. Nick here.
Aaron's here.
So last episode, we went into one of the maybe more memorable moral panics that the U.S. has had. And this week, we're going to explore maybe a sequel of sorts to another moral panic that happened roughly at the same time as the previously mentioned, the aforementioned satanic panic.
Moral Panic 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah. So this one is also brought to you by the fine folks at the Moral Majority.
Mm-hmm.
This one is the PMRC. Now, Aaron, if you could let us know who some of the bigger players behind this
So
was.
as Nick said, the PMRC, the Parent Music Resource Center. Yes. That sounds like a hoot, huh? Woo!
Fun times.
Yeah, oh, yeah. When you
Not Chuck E. Cheese here.
Parents, music, and resource. That sounds like a real happening place. They were around. They started in 1985.
Right.
The four big players in this were founding members, ultimately. Tipper Gore. Her husband was Senator Al Gore from Tennessee.
Everybody knows him as the inventor of the internet.
Absolutely. He invented the entire internet just by himself. Also ended up being vice president to Clinton. Ran against Bush and very famously lost.
Very famously, yeah.
Susan Baker, who at the time, her husband James Baker was the Treasury Secretary under Reagan. He went on to be the Chief of Staff under Bush Sr., so a man very entrenched in Washington politics, to say the least.
Yep.
A woman by the name of Pam Hauer, whose husband Raymond Hauer was so all I could find was simply listed as a realtor. I'm going to guess didn't work for 21st Century or anything like that. I'm going to say multi-million-dollar guy.
Yeah, probably something to do because she had influence.
Yes.
I would say something to do, obviously, with the properties in like Washington,
Absolutely.
D.C. and stuff like
and
that.
not little small homes and condos. This man is, if he's got the kind of money where she's playing with people like this, they're making good money. And Sally, I'm going to go with Nevis, Nevius.
Yeah.
Her husband, John Nevis, was the Washington, D.C. City Council chairman. These were the founding members of it. They eventually grew to about 22 in whole. These were, for the most part, wives of very powerful Washington men and beyond. You know, people with money, let's put it that way. But obviously the top two players there, again, a senator and a guy who is the Treasury Secretary and on to the Chief of Staff. Right. So very powerful husbands.
Big guns.
Big guns. Interesting little part, too. Early on, financed by Mike Love of the Beach Boys.
The Beach fucking Boys. And
the least person in the Beach Boys that most people like, by the way.
Right.
And Mr. Joseph Coors.
Yeah.
In fact, both huge Reagan supporters. In fact, Coors' offices were one of the first places they were meeting. They would give them a free little office where they could kind of meet and go at it. And in a small amount of time, they went from essentially what they would say concerned parents into a large group that was suddenly, they were doing like a letter campaign, going into the recording artistry and stuff like that, RIAA, places like that. And within a few months, they found themselves on Donahue, on Good Morning America, going off about what they saw was music had become perverted and was hurting their children. And what they said initially, that the recording industry needed a rating system to warn parents the way they do with movies.
That also comes into play, but let me rewind a bit.
Yeah.
This all starts with the purchase of the Purple Rain album by one Prince.
Yes.
Also the artist formerly known as Prince.
Right. And formerly alive.
Rest in peace to the GOAT. So Tipper Gore buys the Purple Rain album and plays it for her 11-year-old daughter, I believe.
Yeah, the numbers change depending on what you read, and also, did she buy it for the daughter or did she buy it? Those things get a little murky, but either way, yes.
Either way,
buys this soundtrack to what is a very popular movie. More importantly, a rated R film, by an artist that at this point is pretty popular, and it's mainly about his sexuality and
his eventual conquest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of this woman in the movie, right? Over vanity, right?
Vanity, Apollonia,
Apollonia.
Sheena Easton was another woman that comes out of the kind of machine that is Prince.
Yes.
Remember, he's got many women that come out of this sort of thing. Of course. I mean, the man oozes sexuality. Controversy was an album. There's all these different albums that come out prior to this. Prince is an established artist. To pick up a Prince album and be shocked at sexuality would be like, I don't even know what, to be honest with you.
So the song in question was Darling Nikki.
Yes.
Which we've all heard this song.
Yes.
Or if we haven't, let's put a timeout at this point and go listen to it.
Fantastic song, by the way.
Great fucking song.
Really is.
So
that whole soundtrack, actually, is fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Do yourself a favor.
Yeah. Please.
Please, sorry.
The Dove's Cry is one of the hit songs without a bass line.
Yes.
So there's some.
Again, Prince is one of our great artists all times. Those are amazing albums that he put out. Darling Nikki says caught her masturbating to a magazine.
Yeah, she was apparently a sex fiend, caught her masturbating in the lobby with a magazine.
Yes.
And this line set off so many panties in a bunch. Particularly Tipper Gore's.
Yes.
And she went to her 3 friends and said, "Hey guys, let's start a gang." And
ironically, because Mrs. Baker has the same story about a different artist, that her 7-year-old daughter hears Like a Virgin, and comes in and asks, "What's a virgin?"
Yes.
Now,
exactly.
And I will say, and whether I'm a parent or not, I can understand. These are not things I want my children at that age hearing. I get that part. I totally understand that part. Those are uncomfortable conversations to explain to your 7 or 8-year-old daughter what a virgin is or what masturbation is.
Right.
Totally understand. That's not Prince's fault. It's not my fault, and it's not anyone else's.
Not Madonna's,
but yours.
Yeah.
You're the parent. This is your job. But please continue.
Yeah, no.
So you said she gets back with her friends, and they decide
we're going to start up this group, or we're going to actually raise attention to this.
Right.
And they do eventually develop into the PMRC.
Yes.
Like Aaron said, the Parents Music Resource Center. After they get some support from their husbands, who are already kind of movers and shakers at that time. At one point, they eventually do kind of get support from the PTA.
Yes, in fact, one of the things I did find was even prior to them, there was a Cincinnati school that did write to the RIAA over a certain album. I can't remember which one it was now, but did say like, "Hey, man, you guys need to clean this shit up. Kids are listening to really what we find offensive and dirty, and you need to clean this up." So they weren't necessarily the first, but with the power that they bring with their husbands, this is what it turns into. Where again, now they're on TV. Now they've turned this. What they would like you to believe is just concerned mothers that got together to try to write a letter campaign into, now I'm on national television telling you there's a crisis out there, and it's the rock and roll industry allowing artists to do these over-sexualized songs about drinking, songs about violence, occult, and so on and so forth, and starting a bit of a panic of rock and roll is going to destroy our children.
It's immoral.
Absolutely, yes. And then again, the always famous, the children, everybody. The children.
Protect the children.
It's always protecting the children.
It's going to be the starting battle cry of a lot of these movements, right? It's protect the children, but then eventually children who, right?
Right. But who's actually affected?
Exactly, right. And so this ended up developing into a variety of ways because it did get support from a lot of groups, right? Like the 700 Club at one point was one of them.
Religious groups definitely hopped on board.
Right. And this is, I think, where the conflation with the satanic panic kind of occurs, right? But to stick to this,
please.
They eventually took this all the way to Congress.
Yes.
And had Congress or sessions or meetings or whatever they're called there in front of Congress.
Had a hearing with the Senate committee.
There you go. Yes. Well, yeah, there you go. With the Senate committee. And
that Mr. Gore was actually a part of, by the way, also.
He was the one. Him and one other lady.
There was one other lady. I can't remember which one.
Something.
Yeah.
Right.
Their husbands happened to be on the committee that was going to have this hearing on what they called porn rock.
Porn rock. Because yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Also, an interesting fact is they had already contacted the RIAA many times.
Yes.
Months before, because this happened the almost a month before, actually.
Right.
The hearing is in September. In August, the RIAA let them know, no problem. We're going to do this.
Yeah.
So you say to yourself, then what the fuck do we need a congressional hearing for?
Right. And even the people
and we'll find out later why.
Even the people that they had the congressional or the Senate hearing, excuse me, that group is a weird bunch because it wasn't much to do with what you'd think.
No, the name of the committee, in fact, I wrote it down because, it was definitely that's a weird thing.
Yeah,
but
right.
The name of the committee is the Senate hearing by the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee on porn, to have a hearing on porn rock. And you say to yourself, well, I guess commerce, is where it falls into.
And I guess you have to transport the product.
So you definitely say, like, well, this is interesting because why is this? Well, emphasis on the word commerce. And this may come up later because, like a lot of these things, there's a lot of Trojan horses in this that say they're doing one thing, but there's really another reason. Because you say to yourself, too, why wouldn't the RIAA fight this?
Right.
Why wouldn't they say, go fuck yourself? This is a freedom of speech issue. You can't do this to us. Which, by the way, ACLU and many other places, we're standing back like, I dare you to pass this law.
Right.
Because we'll be there. Please, why did the RIAA capitulate? Why did they cave in and say, okay, we'll do it? And that's very interesting. And the reason is, and Mr. Zappa called him out on that.
Yeah.
At the same time, there happened to be a HR, which means House Resolution 299 or 2911, called the blank tape tax.
Yeah.
So, essentially, taping is becoming a thing. Audio cassette. We are now really switching over from record to audio cassette. More importantly, the blank tape. These are the days of making mixtapes. These are the days of being able to record off the radio, so on and so forth. What the music business sees is, I'm going to lose money.
Right.
And I don't want that. So what they propose is, essentially, the deal they're really making with Congress is pass this law that essentially puts a 1 cent tax on every, I think, 1 foot of tape.
I think
something. There's a math equation that goes, right?
Yeah.
And then the RIAA and record labels would get 90% of that profit,
right,
and 10% would go to the artist. And you and I would get nothing, but pay more for an audio cassette.
Yep.
And that's what's really going on. At least why the RIAA, which is the Record
Industries Association of America. Yeah.
Why they didn't fight this in the end? Because it was a scratch my back and I'll scratch yours.
Of course.
And they were willing to sell out their artists if that's what it meant to keep. Hey, shocker, everybody! The record company cares more about money than anything else. I know. A big surprise.
Exactly right. And like Aaron mentioned, there were musicians involved at this Senate hearing.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was famously Frank Zappa. Mm-hmm. We've all seen the video of him sitting at the table and speaking to everybody. The other two was one Mr. D. Twisted Sister Snyder.
Yep.
Who I think surprised everybody with how like cogent and considerate he was.
Absolutely.
Right? Because you look at D. Snyder and you don't.
Well,
he's a wild person.
And even when you watch him, like, he's setting it up. He knows what theater is.
Yeah, exactly.
He shows up in the cut-off sleeves.
Yeah.
He shows up in jeans. His hair's all frizzy. His spiky teeth. He pulls his speech out of his back pocket, and it's all folded, and he straightens it out on the table. And you know these people are thinking, we're going to eat his ass alive.
Right.
Which, by the way, they had just got a tongue lashing from Frank Zappa, who, by the way, was not ever actually called out by the PMRC.
Right.
He was not called out by
that. No.
He didn't give a shit. He saw this as a First Amendment right. He saw this as an overreach of the government of his First Amendment right and our civil liberties as because he knew there's no way this is just this.
Right.
This is where it begins. This is not where it ends.
He knew it would become something else.
Yes.
And in fact, when he starts his portion of the talk, he does state, I'm not speaking for the music industry.
Right.
They probably wouldn't want me to anyway.
Right.
Because he knows that, people see things differently.
Absolutely.
And he's going to get to the bottom of this because there are other things coming along. And Frank Zappa was very insightful in that. And,
yes.
But you're right. He was not one of the people who were called out. D. Snyder was.
Yes.
And then they had a third person who, out of left fucking field, comes in, John, the Don Denver, right?
I mean, one that you got to remember, they looked at him and thought, that's our guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, he's going to be much nicer than those rocker guys.
Right.
And he pretty much opens his speech with, this is like Nazi Germany. And it only goes from there. And you're just like, holy shit, John Denver, man.
I think is also the first ever time things get escalated that quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's like, something bad? This is Nazis, right? Like,
this
that's
time,
the first
John
experience.
Denver was not full of shit, man. I mean, look, he says, look, you guys misunderstood my song, Rocky Mountain High.
Right.
You banned it from radios because you thought I was talking about drugs, and I wasn't. The film that I made, Oh God, people protested that and freaked out about it, and it was somehow anti-religious. It's not. Yeah. He saw censorship for what it was.
Yes.
It didn't matter. I don't think he was hanging out with Dee Snider later on and going, hey, man, let's do an album together. It didn't matter. I don't think Frank Zappa was a big fan of Twisted Sister either. It didn't matter. What they were there for was about the idea of freedom of speech. Right. And to see this group pretending to be midway through the trial, even they start to admit, this is about censorship. This is not about protecting children. Right. We are going to go further. We need to go further.
Yeah. And Frank Zappa very famously calls out Tipper Gore.
Yes.
And says, you probably have hang-ups about sex.
Yeah.
So songs about masturbation are going to, kind of make you feel weird and whatever. And he was not wrong.
No.
He was not wrong at all, because a lot of the subject matter in these initial songs that were being pointed out were very sexual.
Yes.
And maybe very sexually violent, let's say. But they were very sexual in nature.
Yeah.
Right? And they even called it the porn rock thing, as you mentioned.
The hearing
porn
on
rock.
porn rock.
Right. So they did come up with a handful of songs from a handful of bands that they eventually would call the Filthy 15.
Which they stopped there because the alliteration alone, they were like, this is fantastic. It just sounded good. Because you go, 15's a weird number to stop
right. Because it would have been the Succulent 16.
Right, exactly. But
weird shit.
They liked filthy, and it was just about what do we get to rhyme with filthy, Yeah.
So, Aaron, I believe you have that list.
I do. So one by one, because it's very interesting, especially, obviously by today's standards, many of these songs are like, are you fucking kidding me? So, and I'll be 100% here. Many of these songs, I gave a listen to every one of them. There's actually some Spotify people that have already put the Filthy 15 together as a playlist. Yeah. So I listened to it. Many of these songs are the first time I had ever heard, to be completely honest with you. So it was very interesting to look at. The first one on the list that they have here. Oh, also something along the lines of because it's important because it's actually on here is they also wanted a rating system. That thing. So part of their rating system was to say, X would be for sex or foul language. Right. DA for drugs and alcohol. Yep. V for violence. And O for occult or anti-Christian. And emphasis on the Christian part. Because I'm sure if you wanted to have an anti-Muslim song, they didn't give a fuck.
They didn't give a flying shit.
So, the first one is Judas Priest, Eat Me Alive, getting an X rating because it has to do with sex.
Which, I believe that's on the Defender of... whatever that album
Defender of the Faith?
Defender of the Faith.
Okay.
Defenders of the Faith.
Okay.
Yes. I listened to that song.
Yeah.
Kind of a cool song,
Yeah, I'm not a huge Priest fan, but it was a damn good song.
I like the Sad Wings of Destiny album a lot more.
I mean, it's definitely a Priest song. You hear it and you go, that's fucking Judas Priest, man.
And if you like Judas Priest, you probably like this song. Because it is a fucking cool song.
Great, good little riff, the whole power of his voice, everything.
And Rob Halford is a great singer, great vocalist. And everybody involved with that band are great. And I don't know what the fuck. Just because apparently they make a reference to putting a gun in the make-believe woman's mouth.
Well, I think
the person, right?
The person. Let's be honest. Like that's the other interesting. I don't know who wrote the lyrics here, but I'm going to go ahead and say let's say it was Rob.
Yeah.
What we know about Rob now, when you read those lyrics, you go, yeah, I get it. Yes. It's not violent, especially if he's talking about consenting adults having this kind of sex, right? Then it's technically not a violent act. That's what gets them off. He didn't wear leather because he liked the guy from the Village People, like the Village People guy. He didn't like motorcycles either. They were leather daddies. Yes. They're into sadomasochism. if you read that song, you could definitely read sadomasochism into it. You know what I mean? And no more than that. And eat me alive? Like, come on. He doesn't literally mean chop off my fingers, roast them up, and make them hot dogs.
And I think if they are to assume that these are violent and incredibly sexual in nature, then we can also assume, like you said, that these are consenting people.
Yes.
Within the context of these songs.
Absolutely. Right? And again, one thing that the PMRC was very good at was misinterpreting lyrics. Famously, along with Mr. Snyder, also giving Tipper a little tip of the hat, if you will, when she and her ladies thought that Under the Blade was about sadomasochism.
Right.
And he tells her, no, it's actually about my guitarist getting his tonsils removed.
Yep.
But if Miss McCore was looking for sadomasochism, I could see where she could find it.
Yeah.
You know? And again, this is the irony of a lot of songs.
Yeah.
You can interpret it any way you want. Yeah. But I see nothing in that song that makes me think for a second that this was some sort of violent sex that, this is not, I cum blood from like Cannibal Corpse or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Because that Cannibal Corpse, good thing you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Here's a fucking band that their entire career is on The Living Dead.
Yeah.
And, they do have violent lyrics.
Oh, very much so.
But
Stripped, Raped, and Naked. I mean, that's a song.
Yeah, right. But if you look at what Cannibal Corpse is, I think you are able to kind of sit back and be like, oh, that's just song fodder for this inventive band.
Yes.
And I, even though something weird happened with one of the guitarists where he had a bunch of skulls.
Yeah.
But that aside.
What are the odds?
Exactly, right? Like, of course I choose that fucking example.
But
that aside,
please.
Cannibal Corpse are not serial killers or serial rapists or anything of the sort.
They like horror movies and they're singing about them. That's all they're really doing.
They're shock. Yes. It's shock factor.
So, song number 2. Motley Crue, of all bands, interestingly enough. A song I had never heard.
Oh, right.
Bastard,
yes.
And it gets a V for violence.
Okay, yeah.
Now, another one, very interesting. I read the lyrics as I was looking at this. I read 2 different things and I heard a podcast. All of them had different interpretations of that song.
Yeah.
One person said that they believed it was a rape revenge song. It was a woman getting back at a man that had raped her.
Okay.
Now, it does say, "You'll never rape me again" in the song.
Right.
Others were saying, oh, no, the song's about like getting back at a bad manager that fucked them over. Mm-hmm. Now, I've never read anything that says they interpret it in any way.
Right.
But it talks about sticking you with a knife, you'll never rape me again, and so on and so forth. Yeah. Again, violent? Well, yes, because it speaks of violence. But if it is a rape revenge song, well, I don't know why would that be a bad? You know what I mean?
I would counter their accusation with, at this point in time, maybe I forget the specific years. Mm-hmm. There is a movie that would eventually come out called "I Spit on Your Grave."
Yeah.
Which is perhaps one of the greatest revenge movies after the lead female in this movie gets sexually attacked and abused by a group of guys.
Right.
And she gets revenge on all of them.
Right.
An incredibly gory, grisly detail. But again, it's just a movie.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Where, as we know, this thing happens in real life.
Sure.
And many, many times over.
Yes.
The person doing the actual violence in real life against women tend to get away.
Yes.
So how about we look at that first?
Let's look at the real problem, not the song about the problem.
Exactly. Right.
Yes.
But go on.
No. Then again, the one that started it all, Prince's Darling Nikki.
Darling Nikki.
And again,
the classic.
Again, masturbation, again, which is interesting. The year before, 1999 comes out. And in 1999, one of the big hits on that is Little Red Corvette when he says, "Pocket full of horses, most of them use," which, by the way, is a brilliant fucking line in general. Yeah. But the way to say she's got a bunch of condoms and she's used some of them, that's why they're missing. Right. What a great line. But Tipper didn't hear that one? Didn't get that? I
guess the metaphor was lost there.
I guess. Yes.
The simile or whatever.
And again, he gets a X rating for his sexual content.
Okay. Well, Prince, a very hypersexual person, gets an X rating in life from me.
Absolutely.
Because we all saw Purple Rain, and there was no way anybody walked out not being steamy.
No,
just a movie. Just a movie.
And again, if you don't want your 8-year-old to listen to Prince, I totally understand.
Yes.
I'm with you. I don't want my 8-year-old listening to Prince. But that's not, so Prince doesn't, get penalized for that. I'm sorry.
Right.
That's your job as a parent. Something that got brought up in the trial many times by the defendants were saying, look, you don't get to do my job.
Right.
That's my job. I don't need the
Yes.
government to do it for me.
Right.
And
in fact, that's something that Frank Zappa kind of throws back in their face.
Yes.
Right. Like, you're putting this on the musicians.
Yes.
And the labels.
Yes.
Right? But this should be your your task.
Yes.
You're the parent.
This is what you're supposed to do as a parent.
Right.
And, the other thing to remember that I think is so great is, remember, Dee and, what's his name? Frank, do not drink. They do not do drugs.
Right.
They are happily married, and they have many children. In fact, Frank Zappa brought, I believe, Dweezil and Moon Unit to also testify as kids, essentially like, you're hurting me and my ability to listen to what I want to listen to.
Yep.
I don't think they got to actually go up there, but he brought them with them.
Yeah.
So our next song, and this one, I only know it because I remember a friend would make jokes of it. Sheena Easton's Sugar Walls.
Sugar Walls.
Also getting an X rating, which Sugar Walls, for those who may not have put this together, and I imagine most adults would, but children would never get, she's talking about the inside of her vagina.
Yeah.
She's saying, hey, baby, you come to me, you can get da-da-da-da. The song is super, super sexual. Again, another one coming out of that Prince model.
And Sheena Easton even, there was a clip on one of the videos that I came up on where she said, if you don't want to listen to these songs,
There you go.
What's the option? Go be violent, right? Which,
Yes.
Sheena Easton, thank you for your fucking eternal knowledge.
Yeah, well, it is that eternal question we always have to say to ourselves. Why are we more likely to let our children see violence than sex?
Yeah. Well, it's...
Why is that? Why do we rather have our children see a person shooting another person, a Western, but we don't want to let them see that they might make love? I'm not saying they got to see porn. I'm just saying, like, oh my God, they're kissing and they sleep in the same bed. You know what I mean? Like, we can't show that. But let John Wayne kill the shit out of 50 Native Americans. I don't have a problem with it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's a weird thing in this country when it comes to that.
And I got to just include...
Please.
Sugar Walls is a great fucking song. Great fucking song.
Sheena Easton had some really great songs back in the day, for sure. Next is, this was one of the more infamous songs on there for sure. Wasps, Animal, Fuck Like a Beast.
Okay, yeah. So, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I am not a fan in any way, shape, or form.
Same.
They're kind of like a satanic kiss kind of thing.
Yeah,
very weird and occulty. They never really did anything for me. Shock rocker kind of thing.
Yep.
Interestingly enough, Mr. Lawless is now a born-again Christian, so he doesn't even perform this song and has said that he would not like it to represent his career.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, but whatever. Song's kind of whatever. I get it. Again, it too gets an X rating because of the sexual content.
Sure. And I think one of the concerns was also the 12-inch saw blade in his crotch and all this. And
his one person brought album covers, and his was one of them, along with Wendy O. Williams.
For the Wow album.
Yes.
Yeah.
And weirdly, Pyromania. Because she said it's blowing up a building would cause violence. Because on the Pyromania cover, that's a weird one when you think of it. Yeah, we're really stretching.
Def Leppard is not. I would not consider them a dangerous porn rock band.
No, well, porn maybe, but I mean they do like sugar on them. So
that's true. This is true. Well, no, they like it being poured
on them, and even that's a
that's a
metaphor. So next, and this is by far Merciful Fate, Into the Coven gets a cult.
Okay.
Of course it gets a cult. Merciful Fate's not hiding anything.
I do believe the king is a practicing Satanist.
Yes.
So, all right, this one they got it right.
Oh, for sure.
But
that doesn't mean I can't listen to it if I don't want to.
Exactly. Right.
And it doesn't mean every kid that listens to it's going to worship Satan.
I will say, if I was a bigger fan of Merciful Fate,
sure.
and I came up on this record and it had an O rating for a cult, guess what fucking album I'm buying?
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. I'll be buying this one. Yeah, of course.
And I think...
And by the way, it goes with what Merciful Fate does. It's called, I believe it's on the album, Break the Oath. He's not hiding anything. This wasn't like some hidden track.
This is not subversive.
In any way.
Right? It's very out in the open.
And think about it this. even by today's standards, Merciful Fate is in no way a top 10 Billboard artist in any way, shape, or form. He's carved out an amazing career. God bless him, or I guess in this case, Satan bless him.
Yeah.
You know, do his thing. No problem. How much did this fucking help him?
Right. Well, it's funny you say that.
Who knew? And then suddenly he's on the Filthy 15.
It's funny you say that. And just to sidetrack just a little bit.
Please, no.
A lot of people probably would assume that getting this type of attention would help these bands, but a lot of them didn't. Like,
it depends on who you talk to. So at least what I read, it depended on who you talk to. I think, ironically, Mr. Lawless, who apparently isn't lawless anymore because he's born again Christian, but lawful. He made an interesting point, which was like, did it make us more popular? Yeah, with grandmothers in the Midwest, but they don't buy our records.
It made them...
I became a household name.
Household names.
But it didn't mean record sales for me, at least, he said. Yes.
I have a bit of a anecdote.
No, please.
One of the bands that I used to play in played with a band that apparently got called out during this thing.
Oh, interesting.
There was a band called Impaler.
Okay.
And they were around at this point, and they got called out. And when we played with them, that's all they fucking spoke about was being called out by Tipper Gore and how they saw absolutely no extra money come in.
Interesting.
And I was like, well,
it's tough enough to make it as a metal artist in general.
Of course.
So just because I'm on this list doesn't necessarily mean,
help.
Well, I hate this music, but now, you know what I mean? Like I've never heard of Merciful. I mean, I have to think. Just by the law of averages, I'm sure some people did buy this stuff just to go, well, what is it?
Right. Yeah, of course.
But if you don't like it, you don't like it.
Right.
There have been plenty of what you would call, there's plenty of bands you and I will listen to on a daily basis that go, I heard a couple songs, not for me.
Right.
But somebody told me it was good, or it's on the Billboard charts, everybody's talking about it. I'll check it out. It doesn't necessarily turn into record sales. You're absolutely, I agree with that. But notoriety, hey, some
notoriety,
people
of course.
Some people believe all press is good press,
Well, yeah.
After Merciful Fate, we have Vanity with Strap-On Robbie Baby. This one's hard to find, actually. I imagine it's on YouTube. I didn't go that deep trying to do so.
It is on YouTube.
Okay, good. I assumed as much. She too, she's now passed, sadly. She too comes out of the Prince machine that brings in beautifully talented women and then goes, go have a career, and they do. Yeah. She was very hypersexual. I mean, Vanity was like, she oozed sex in a way that Madonna wished she could have, quite frankly.
She was in the movie...
The Last Dragon.
The Last Dragon.
Yes.
I gotta tell you, man, all the scenes she's in, I am just...
She's absolutely gorgeous.
Head over heels.
She's stunning. Could sing, dance, very talented. And again, Prince finds her, molds her, sends her out into the world, and she has massive hits. Yes. Ironically, this was not one of them.
Yeah, right?
That's the other weird part. Like, she has big hits, and this ain't one of them.
Yeah.
This is what you would call an album deep cut.
And that's the thing. Even with like that Motley Crue song.
Very much a deep cut.
They went fucking deep on this shit.
Is it on that album or the album before is Shout at the Devil?
It's the one before.
Okay, so it's like they have other ones where they're literally saying shit that
they could have held up the fucking cover.
Yeah, there you go.
And been like, hey man, this dude's got a fucking boner in these pants. Right. What are we doing? You know? Yeah.
So yeah, Vanity again sadly passed away. Great artist, but she became a born-again Christian. She very much pushed back on that part of her career, and was very ashamed of it, and didn't want anything to do with it towards the end of her life. Right. She also, I think, had some drug problems and stuff like that. So there's some sadness there, but So the next one is Def Leppard's High and Dry.
Okay,
and it gets a DA for drug and alcohol.
High and Dry. Yeah. All right. Did you see the lyrics to this song?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Saturday. And it's I'm partying with my friends and having a great fucking time.
Right. Yes. Which, again...
a party song. We're an American band. Yeah. These songs have been done a million times.
Another band that I think gets mentioned in this whole talk, which is another party band, Van Halen.
Yes, right? Yes. They're not on the Filthy 15, but yes.
But they bring up the video for Hot
for Teacher. There it is.
Which,
right.
Again, I'm sure kids who are entering a particular stage in life.
Of course, it's puberty, but how many hot teachers do you... Wayne Gretzky's wife is not usually your teacher.
Right.
It just doesn't happen that way. I'm
This
sorry.
is exactly right.
You know? And again, it's a video. For fuck's sake. Look, you're telling me some kid who's going through puberty doesn't already find women hot until he watched Hot for Teacher?
Right. Yeah.
Come on.
That kid's finding porn tapes in his
Yes.
uncle's closet.
Now,
Right.
if we want to discuss how it may be, what's the word I want to say? Degrading to women and
Sure.
so on. That's a different
There's-
discussion. Absolutely.
with all of these songs,
Absolutely.
if the subject was, hey, there's overt misogyny in this,
For sure, especially when we get to one song there in
Oh,
particular.
yes. Yeah.
So we'll keep going here. So Twisted Sisters, this is a weird one. Twisted Sisters, We're Not Gonna Take It gets violence. Now, as D. Snyder says, this is bullshit because the song's not violent. First of all, it's literally a Christmas song that he takes. Right, it's the da 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 da.
Yeah,
Come
come
all
on,
ye
ye
faithful,
faithful. Yeah,
and he
yeah.
twists it because he's Twisted Sister and makes it into this song. We're not going to take it.
like a revolutionary type song.
Absolutely, right? Which is so many weird things. Which he does point out on the thing. This isn't about the song; it's the video.
Right.
You watch the video and you assume the song was violent. By the way, go watch the video. It is no more violent than any Bugs Bunny cartoon you have ever seen in your life, which is what he modeled the video after.
Yep.
The violence is cartoonish at best.
Yeah.
A Sylvester Stallone movie has far more violence in it than this music video.
I mean, yeah.
You know what I mean? In every way, shape, or form. So, again, this is adding somebody because you really want to say something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The song is not violent. I don't care. Well, and then, of course, the other irony is now you have Trump trying to use it as fucking rallies.
Yes.
I mean, it's again, full circle, everybody.
Full circle. Yeah.
This one also threw me. Madonna's Dress You Up gets an X rating. First of all, I forgot what a banger that song is.
That's a great song.
It really is, man. And number two, of all the Madonna songs, it's the least sexual of all them. I'm going to dress you up in my love
Yeah.
all over your body is about as sexy as it gets in there.
Yeah. I mean,
She's clearly, listen, she wants to fuck whoever she's singing about.
Sure,
I get that.
sure.
But it's not dirty.
but it's love also,
It's,
right?
She's that you've got style. That's what all the girls say. Like
Right.
she's infatuated with this guy and she wants to dress him up in her love.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, love, not lust.
Not lust, because that was another thing that they were kind of contending.
Yeah.
That like love was thrown out the window,
Right.
and this is just nothing
This
but
is sex.
animal.
Which
you know,
again, if there's anything Christians hate more, it's just having fun sex.
Having fun
sex
sex,
is for
yeah.
procreation only.
Right,
You
right.
know? And between a man and a woman.
and they also, I think, they called out. They didn't mention her
Mm-hmm.
in this, or I don't think she's part of this. But Tina Turner, one of her songs,
Private dancer or something like that?
maybe.
Okay.
Where they were like, "Love's, what's love got to do with it?"
Oh,
Right.
right.
It's just a second-hand emotion.
Right.
And I know I'm fucking doing horribly at that song.
It feels like Tina's here.
Well, I am inspired by Miss Turner and her legs, right? But yeah, so like they called out Tina Turner and this whole process, but it's like, there is a sort of attraction that happens between people that sometimes is just fucking, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yes.
plainly said, it's just
Yes.
fucking, and it's safe, or it can be safe.
Yes.
It's very satisfying, and it can lead to love.
Yes.
But these people were throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
Yeah, of course. Well,
Right.
to your point, one of the great, as he is a giant clip machine, Mr. Zappa said, "Your bill is essentially like trying to prevent dandruff by beheading people."
Oh, exactly. Yes.
You
yes.
know, I
yeah.
think I butchered that a little bit, but
Well,
still cutting the head off. And then
You are the Aaron of invention in this one.
this one's one of my favorites too. I love it because Cyndi Lauper's "She Bop."
She-Bop.
One of the 4 great 80s masturbation songs, along with Turning Japanese by the Vapors,
Yeah.
Dancing by Myself by Billy Idol,
Yeah.
and Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Yeah.
You know, by the way, every one of those songs massively popular,
Yep.
and most people didn't quite know what those songs were about until it was far too late when they
Yeah.
were walking around with their Frankie Says Relax shirts. But her song "She Bop," which again, if you listened to it, just heard it on the radio, you wouldn't know it was about female masturbation.
Right. And I think there was something somewhere along the lines of like she didn't intend it to be that. either.
Oh, the things I read said, "Oh, very much so."
Okay.
And she was definitely trying to be coy about the whole
There
thing.
you go. I think that's better.
She was, the innuendo was definitely there.
Perfect word for it, innuendo.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. And again, it was... You'd have to really look at the lyrics and again, if you're a 7 or 8 year old kid, I don't think you'd even know.
You're translating that as like, oh, that's a dance,
Yeah,
or that's
exactly.
a weird noise to make to dance to, right?
Now, if you watch the music video, there is some innuendo in there also.
Sure,
There's like a blind guy dancing around her. No offense, but the idea that masturbation.
That's what we do best.
Masturbation will make you go blind is kind of the innuendo in the video.
Which, ladies and gentlemen, that's exactly how I went blind.
The man loves to masturbate. People, I'll tell you, it's an art form.
I listened to all these 15 songs.
Now, this was an interesting one because I definitely knew this song. AC/DC's "Let Me Put My Love Into You."
All right.
X-rated. Again, they love sex.
Yeah.
They've always sung about sex. Now, you want to get on the violent side, there are some lyrics that, again, I do not believe they are being violent, but you read them and you go, whew, don't you struggle, don't you fight, don't you worry, because it's your turn tonight. Let me put my love into you, babe. Like, who's struggling and who's fighting? Again, I think what they're really trying to say, I want to believe, is just relax. We're going to make some love tonight. I don't think he's forcing it on a woman.
Don't stress. It's happening.
It's just, we're just going to make love. And, and they put my love into you. Again, if you can't figure that one out. Like, that one's far more than She-Bop.
I would say so. Yeah.
That one we all get. There was no, especially it's on the same album of Giving the Dog a Bone. Like, I don't think he means Fido,
Right.
This one, Black Sabbath Trashed. Gets a DNA for drugs and alcohol.
Man, of all the Black Sabbath songs.
Well, and again, very interesting, right? This is the one-off record of Ian Gillan from Deep Purple as the lead vocalist, which I believe at this point, is it just Tony? This is the Sabbath I do not give a shit about after Ozzy
when
leaves.
It's Tony Iommi.
He's just alone? There's no Geezer, no more anybody.
I don't believe so.
Okay, so either way, brings in Ian Gillan for Born Again?
Born Again.
Has the red baby Satan thing on it, which... Wouldn't that be? Why didn't that come up? Anyway.
You'd think.
And the song is essentially, you read the lyrics, I'm trashed. I'm getting fucked up. I can't get to my car and I want to race my car or some shit like that. Ian Gillan with cars, him and Deep Purple with cars. I don't know. They love cars.
He likes his cars.
He clearly. I'm going to go out of order here just for a second because I want to leave this one for last because I think it's hilarious. Sure. But let me go. Venom's Possessed with a Cult. Again, like Merciful Fate, they never fucking hid who they were. Unlike Merciful Fate, they also weren't Satanists. They were a joke. They were like, this sells, let's push this, so on and so forth.
Venom was the Spinal Tap of that whole fucking...
Thank you.
Right? Like...
But
I love their music, by the way.
And again, they know what they're doing. They've always been upfront about it for the most part. So it's like, of course it's possessed. It's on a fucking. But they have the album called Black Metal.
Right.
But they're not hiding it. And even as Kronos said in a thing I saw, he's like, that's what rock and roll's supposed to be about. What the fuck?
Exactly. Right.
Relax.
Right. Yeah.
But if you don't want your kids to hear it, then don't let them fucking hear it. No problem.
You're the parent.
Yes.
Do the parenting.
There it is. Do your fucking job. And the last one, probably might be my favorite out of all of these, to be honest with you, from the Mary Jane Girls, My House. Great fucking song. A banger, man. Good little dance number. The Mary Jane Girls coming from Rick James. He finds them. And it's just a nice little, essentially it is literally saying, hey, you're hot, you're sexy, why don't you come to my house and let's have some fun.
Yeah.
It doesn't really get overt. I mean, it's not Sugar Walls.
Right.
It's not Darlin' Nikki by any stretch.
Right.
They were the stuff I found. One of the ladies on there, she was very offended and upset. She was like, "I do not see why this song was ever on here." Now, one thing I think is interesting too is, also I think it's funny that they missed the part where the band's called Mary Jane Girls. That part didn't bother you, or are you so stupid you didn't understand what that innuendo was?
They were too busy looking for the sex that they missed the
drug reference.
Yeah.
Like, you understand none of these ladies are named Mary Jane, right?
Right.
What a coincidence. We found 3 ladies named Mary Jane that can all sing.
It'd be funny if after the fact they're like, wait a minute.
Son of a bitch. We could have given drug and alcohol too.
Yeah.
But one thing I think is interesting, and this is continued to this day, if you look at some of these songs that are considered sexual, they're coming from women.
Oh, yeah.
Women
Yeah,
expressing their sexuality is something that a lot of people have problems with.
Yes.
And then when you have women of color expressing their sexuality, it becomes even worse. So I think that definitely where something like a Mary Jane Girl or Cyndi Lauper and Madonna's, Sheena Easton's and the Vanities, it's very much about the fact that I think it does. I think there's even some kind of, to Mr. Zappa's point, is to say that maybe there's an uncomfortable with the fact that these women are not as secure in their sexuality as these other women are.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
you know, and I just think it. So that, by the way, sorry, that was the Filthy 15.
That is the Filthy 15.
These were the examples that the PMRC used to say, obviously, they believe there was far more than 15.
Yeah.
But these were the 15 so egregious that they made their list, and that these were the things that were poisoning our children, and we needed to do something about it with a rating system that would somehow do what exactly?
Right.
You know? And the fallout of this ends up being is that the recording industry essentially capitulates. They say, fine, we're going to put the sign, it's just a parental advisory, so on and so forth. Well, what they really found out was things like, guess what? Walmart doesn't carry it. Anything that has a warning label, they will not carry it. So now artists are losing out on sales. Yep. Record companies are losing out on their ability to sell those records, which now Walmart feels bigger than it certainly was at that time, at least here, or at least here in California. You know, when I was a kid, we didn't have Walmarts out here. You know what I mean?
Right.
But Midwest, all you had was a Walmart.
Right. Yeah,
so if you were looking for music, this is where you went to find it.
Yeah.
Well, not if they had these. Because somebody sat in a room somewhere and said, kids shouldn't listen to that, because I don't think kids should listen to that. Yeah. You know? So there's a lot of ripple effect to this. You go and look at, I think the first one that gets a tag is Two Live Crews, banned in the USA.
Yeah.
Well, people got arrested for carrying that album.
Yep.
This isn't just a protecting children thing anymore. An adult who ran a record store wanted to sell that record. And the Dade County Police let it be known to anyone, if you carry this record, we will arrest you.
Right.
And this guy said, well, I dare you. And he did. He got arrested. Over a record?
Yeah, that's...
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous, you know? Yeah,
and to your point
Please.
about the sexuality being displayed by primarily women, a lot of women of color. I think it was Tipper Gore actually had a book around this time called "Raising PG Children in an X-Rated World."
There it is. Yes.
Right.
That was it. Yep.
Where one of her, it was, of course, she dealt a lot with the overt sexuality in these songs and the culture of the youth, because much like we referenced in our Satanic Panic episode, the youth of America were becoming more viable in the way of being consumers.
Yes.
Right? So they're the ones who have now that extra spending money and that time after school or what have you, and can go out and buy these records and, according to the PMRC, get influenced. Right. But another thing that she put up too, and I think this speaks to why bands like Two Live Crew, eventually like Ice-T and bands like this, is because another point she made in this book of hers is that white children were more prone to being suicidal. White male children. So at this time when hip hop and rap are starting to rear their heads and become the presence that they are now.
Absolutely.
We have these stickers being put on these albums to sort of prevent straight white kids from getting their hands on them and being influenced. Because famously, Kid Rock gets a sticker.
Yep.
Eminem gets a sticker, right? Ice-T, like I mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
He makes a reference to Tipper Gore. And this is going to make Amy happy because she was reminding me of this reference about, like, he said something like, sorry, Tip, I guess you're not getting enough dick or something like that.
Oh,
right?
yeah, no.
And I thought that also speaks a lot to the purposes of why this group was doing what they did.
There's always subversive stuff, and again, as we pointed out in the Satanic Panic, and you see it here. Meet the new boss. It's same as the old boss.
Right. Yes.
It doesn't move. It's shape changer. That's all this is.
Yeah.
You know, ironically, like people like Tipper Gore, famously, her and her husband were deadheads. Yeah. By the way, she plays drums in a rock band when she was a kid and plays drums still with the Dead sometimes when they come into town.
Wait, with the Grateful Dead.
Yes.
Tipper Gore.
Not literally drums like she's back there with Phil Leash, I think is his name, with a drum kit, but she'll play bongos and shit with them up on stage.
I did not know
Oh,
that.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I found pictures of it. Of course.
All right.
So, listen, the Grateful Dead, I mean, Jesus H. Christ. You talk about a drug band.
Yeah.
You talk about a band that influenced people to do, literally, drop out and do acid and follow them around the country. That was okay.
They ruined drug taking for other bands, right? Like,
right. Yeah. I mean, they killed the hippie movement, which is probably a good thing, but it's why, if you hate hippies, it's probably why.
Because of their overt drug use, we got bands like Fish.
Yes.
And that's why I hate them.
Yes. I mean, and again, one thing you and I talked about this prior is one thing you read over and over again from these ladies over and over again was like, this is far different from the days of Elvis and the Beatles.
And the Beatles, yeah.
Well, you clearly don't remember the days of Elvis and the Beatles.
Right.
Elvis Presley could not be shown from the waist down on television because they believed his dance moves would make women cream their panties, and therefore we can't have him on TV.
Not wrong, by the way.
Well, yes, not at all, but it was too sexual.
Right.
The Beatles come over to America, and everyone wants to know who these long-haired hippies are.
Yep.
And do yourself a favor, take a look. Their hair is not long in any way, shape, or form, except for late 50s, 60s America.
Right. Little Richard
Yeah,
gets prevented from playing in places because, one, he's black.
Yes.
Two, he's gay.
Yes.
And he's singing songs,
In fact, dolling him up a little bit made it a little bit better because then guys were okay with white women screaming at him. Because
Right.
they could point at him and go, he might be a little bit anyway, so who cares?
Right.
I mean, music is being banned from day fucking one.
Yep.
I compiled a little list because I think it's, how far back you can go. Like one of the first ones that is Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit.
Oh, yeah.
The FBI tries to shut this song down. She is arrested for singing it.
Yeah.
A song about black people being hung in the South.
Hanged. Sorry.
Hanged.
Yeah.
Yes. English is also my second language. Stupidity is my first.
No.
No. Please. So, that's a song that gets banned. Here's another one that I don't think a lot of real Americans know either. Woody Guthrie's This Land Is Your Land.
Right.
Was banned. They thought he was a commie for singing that song.
Yeah.
Now we're teaching our children to sing it in preschool. And see how the times change, everybody? And again, so many. One famously, Link Ray's Rumble.
Oh, yeah.
They thought it would incite violence. It's an instrumental.
Yeah.
There's no words.
Which speaks,
but it sounded so different.
It speaks to the power of music.
Absolutely.
And also speaks to how naive these people are,
Yes.
right? From day one.
And to the point you were making about the rap thing, let's not forget the first purveyors of much of this music that went on to influence the people like Jerry Lee Lewis and Elvis Presley were black.
Yeah.
And they did not want to see their white children turning into black people.
Right.
And that's how they saw this music, because that's the reality of it for a lot of them.
Yeah.
It wasn't about rock and roll. It wasn't the sound of a guitar.
Right.
It was who's playing it. And this continues. I mean, after the PMRC essentially goes away and we go, who cares? Well, you get Ice-T's Cop Killer.
Yeah.
That's probably the next real big. Now you have others like Madonna's, Like a Prayer video. Remember she had the burning crosses, and, the Pope went after her, Pepsi dropped her. We've had these continue. Somebody does something that pisses people off.
Yeah. I mean, even, maybe starting in the mid 90s, they switch focus and start going after movies and video games.
Oh, of course. Right. Columbine, and suddenly it's The Matrix and video games and Marilyn Manson.
Yep. So
there's always a scapegoat.
It's always a scapegoat, and they know exactly who to pin it on, when the decade changes. Because I feel like every decade afterwards, they've had a different,
there's always a boogeyman song. The last one that I can honestly remember, and I'm sure I've never really heard it, is the WAP. Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion. I've never personally myself. I've never heard the song, but again, stands for wet ass pussy.
Yeah.
And essentially, you have two black women.
Something Ben Shapiro knows nothing about.
Yes, he doesn't understand how vaginas get wet. Boy, how excited his wife must be. It's just to say these are two black women, essentially bragging on how good their pussy is.
Yeah.
And people were up in arms. Yeah. And I remember hearing somebody say this, and I thought it was such an excellent point when they were like, but what about children? And somebody said, who said this song was for children?
Right, yeah.
And I thought, right. I don't think Prince was sitting around writing Darling Nikki going, 8-year-olds are going to fucking love this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, not everything is for children. And it's your job as a parent to figure that out.
You can't leave this to a government institution because they will...
especially not government one.
Right. Well, it's like they'll see everything as a target and just spread their cast their net over everything, regardless of whether it falls under what the jurisdiction of what they're trying to do. I remember more recently also Lil Nas X.
Oh yes,
with Country Road.
Another one, yes.
Right. Famously, he's gay, and apparently also was at some point kind of Satanist and trying to make shoes with his blood or something,
I think there was it was the song after the Country Road. He did a video in which essentially he gets a lap dance by Satan. Right,
yeah, so it's like, well, are we paying attention here? Because I'm sure whatever imagery he used meant something for the song and whatnot, but like, he's just using these to move products, to make the song popular.
Kiss put their blood in their fucking
on
comic
their vinyl
book.
And all that shit. Yeah. And why didn't Love Gun get a fucking... Because Love Gun is actually about the...
Again, I think it's the time. I don't know when Love Gun comes out, as I'm not a big Kiss thing, but these are songs that are happening at that time. I think that's why.
I think you're right.
Yeah,
because
so it's just
I would have chosen Snowblind by Black Sabbath as the drug song.
Of course.
Well, I mean, the whole album.
Just the first Black Sabbath album. I mean, how about NIB? The Devil Falls in Love, my favorite
Sabbath
song of all time.
Yeah.
I mean, yes. Again, they are trying to, because again, you don't want to show the old because you go, well, then we've gotten past that. You need to show now, which, by the way, again, half those songs aren't even that big of hits.
They're not.
So,
they become hits, and, they, I think, deservedly became kind of targets for musicians after the fact who took shots at them.
The P.M.R.C. Tipper Gore gets a lot of heat. And, I will say, one of the things I did notice, and maybe, as time goes by, one of the things that you do notice in Frank Zappa's speech and a little bit in Dee Snider's, there's a lot of, I hate to use that word, but it is some misogyny, where it's this idea of, hey, Washington wife, why don't you go back in the kitchen?
Right.
You need something to do. And it's like, whoa, hey.
Right.
And I love Frank Zappa for a lot of reasons, but you can find some of that in what he would say from time to time.
I mean, and he is kind of a troubled character outside of this scenario.
Absolutely. Right? There are things you could definitely point at and here and there. Again, I think they felt attacked and they were trying to attack back. I don't think in any way that Frank Zappa is necessarily a misogynist or hates women or doesn't think they should be. It was just this thing of like, are you just bored and you need something to do? Because this is absolutely ridiculous what you're doing.
I don't want to always dismiss it in this manner, but because we're using hindsight here, this was the attitude of the time.
Yes. There was a sense of like, your husband has the job, not you. What are you doing?
Right.
And now you're trying to use this. And again, there was even some that have, if you really want to get conspiratorial, there are some that think that this was all about trying to get Al Gore to be more popular, whether Tipper and Al were the architects of it or were just part of the mechanism to do so. Right. She famously does quit when he becomes vice president.
Yes.
And the group pretty much breaks up after that. Now I'm sure there's still plenty of watch groups that are looking over music and so on and so forth. They don't need the PMRC, which also lets me know, so you're done protecting children? Children protected.
So mission accomplished.
Yeah, mission accomplished. All children are protected. We're done here, everybody. Chalk it up. Walk away. Yeah. Or did you realize what you were actually trying to accomplish, you couldn't? Right. They put a stop to it, and you went, shit, we have things like freedom of speech.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of it for me is just, one thing that gets said a lot, too, is like, well, like what they do with the movie rating. Well, let me tell you, I would recommend to everyone a great documentary called This Film Is Not Yet Rated.
Oh, yeah.
Learn about the MPAA.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Because it's a great way to kind of compare it where you go, well, yeah. And listen, as a parent, I'm not going to lie. I've used it several times. When my children were under 13, if it was PG-13, I could pretty much say, well, they probably won't be watching that. If it's PG, they can. If it's rated R, absolutely not.
Right.
But they were still times where I would watch it and go, oh, yeah, the kids can watch this. Well, I'm not worried about it, you know? And then there were other times where that didn't necessarily work out, you know?
Yeah.
But again, that's my responsibility. I don't need the government doing it.
Right.
I do see a rating system where you go, it could be helpful, but who's going to do it? Whose hands are going to be involved?
Especially with music, because it can be so subjective.
Thank you. Yes.
It can mean anything to anybody.
Again, Bastard, I told you 3 different people I heard talk about the song, and they gave 3 different versions of what they thought that song was about.
Yeah, and I, not that I'm incredibly supportive of the movie rating, but I can see it coming into play there because if you don't know what you're getting yourself into for the next couple of hours,
for sure,
it can be jarring.
Well, again,
and I understand that
the
because
same
it's
thing,
also a visual thing,
yes,
right?
And the same thing with music. I get it. I'm purchasing something. How do I know what I'm going to hear?
Right.
You're right. Look, again, like so many of these thinly veiled Trojan horses that these people bring, they start with a premise that sounds kind of logical. That you go, well, yeah. Now, again, if you look into the MPAA, like the fact that there's a Catholic priest and a essentially evangelical priest that are on the committee to decide what the rating of a movie is.
Yeah.
Excuse me? Why do they need to be there?
Right.
You know?
Because they're probably not looking at these movies anyways. So why are we taking their fucking word?
And then what offends a priest isn't necessarily going to offend you or I.
Or even in that scenario, that priest and that minister or whoever that other guys, they might be offended by completely separate things.
Right.
And so now that net gets wider.
Oh, dude.
Right?
Like, they got all sorts of weird rules when it comes to that. Without getting too deep, it's like showing a vagina is a PG-13, maybe an R. Showing a penis for any length of time, no pun intended, is like, you're going to get an X rating. It's like, what?
For at least 6 minutes of time.
Yeah, I mean, genitalia is genitalia. So, again, it's to say the premise of it is not necessarily a bad thing, but who's going to institute it? The government of the United States should not be the ones doing it.
Right.
You should not be impeding on free speech. Period. End of story. If a record label decides they want to do it, that's on them.
Yeah.
And then it's up to the artist to say, well, then I don't want to sign with you if you're going to censor my albums.
Right. And a lot of censoring actually did happen. There are alternate covers for a lot of these albums. Famously, I think they wanted the option to hide some of these graphic images from these covers, like under the sales desk or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's that. That's what Spinal Tap's making fun of when their cover is completely black because they have to black out the bad stuff.
Yeah, right. So there were these residual effects that I don't know necessarily that they're carried out to a T anymore, but they still linger, right?
Well, even okay, here's a great question. Well, I just said I have a great question. Look at me. But here's a question I would have for you. Do you ever remember not being able to purchase something because it had a parental advisory sticker on it? Were you ever denied one?
No.
Me neither.
No.
Not once.
Yeah.
And I had been buying since I was probably 13, 14 years old.
Same.
And when I started buying stuff that had parental advisory stickers, the guy behind the counter never was like, hey, bro, I'm going to need to see some ID.
I don't even remember, because I remember having albums with the parental advisory sticker.
For sure.
I don't remember my parents being there for any of these, And I don't know if this is like just because the store was putting them on whatever they were getting.
Right.
That was supposed to be like, not for kids or
right,
whatever.
right.
But yeah, like a bunch of, like the Misfits that I bought on cassette had it.
I
had
read
the sticker.
The only one that came close to that was I bought a Vulgar Display of Power, had it on there.
Oh, yeah.
And as I was paying for it, my mom walked into the Sam Goody and grabbed the tape. And I thought, uh-oh, here we go. And she kind of, and didn't say anything and moved on. Wow. So I was just like, okay then, whatever,
Yeah.
And it didn't make me buy it, but I was definitely like, okay, I guess I know what's coming. Well, I mean, one of the songs called Fucking Hostile, so I think I know where we're going here.
One of the 3 musicians, and I don't know if it was Bob Denver or not, but I think it was him who might have said that, like, hey, look, by putting this sticker on the album, you're just going to make people think, oh, that's the cool
Oh, I think there was a lot of artists who said that. I think Denver was definitely one of them. I even read a guy from Earth, Wind, and Fire said that. Which you're like, well, I don't think any of his albums, but I still but I also love the idea. It's like it may not affect me, but this is bullshit.
Right.
I think, and again, it goes to what you said. The notoriety for sure. Again, how many people? I'm sure there's a handful of people who bought it because it was on there.
Right.
D. Snyder also. Now that you say that, I'm reminded. He did say, really, what you're telling is now all the kids know those are the cool albums.
Those are the cool ones. Yeah.
Because they got parental advisory stickers on them.
I also frequented Sam Goody back in my day. Sam Goody and Music Plus.
Absolutely.
And stuff like this, right. I remember making it a point at some time to see what had that sticker.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Because this is actually how I came across Danzig.
Okay.
And it wasn't, I think this was even, because when I started getting into Danzig, I remember seeing the CD for the first album.
Okay.
And it was just, the
Right.
skull. Right?
Don't tell me.
Famously the skull.
Yeah.
And it had the sticker on the one empty corner of that album cover.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember looking at that and asking my dad, hey, can you get me that for Christmas? And he did.
Right on.
That was the one time my dad was ever like, I'm stepping in here.
I got
But he
you.
got me the album.
I got you.
It's not like he said, no, you can't have that.
Right.
He got us the fucking album.
Oh, yeah.
And my kid brother, who's 5 years younger, so he was probably 8 years old or something, he's listening to Danzig at that point in time. And it has the goddamn sticker on it. So it's like, what good was this? Because my parents, while not overtly religious or strict or anything like that, they saw it.
Yeah, look. How many movies have been rated? My dad, for whatever reason, decided I could watch Terminator when I was 9 or 10, and Conan when I was that age.
Hell yeah.
Should I have? Probably not. I don't know that I would have let my 9 or 10-year-old. I think my dad would just probably be more lazy than anything else, But at the same time, look, putting a rating isn't going to... Dude, I remember going one time, it was a friend that I knew, we went to go see Good Morning Vietnam.
Nice.
His mom had to sign a piece of paper that said, I am allowing these 2 kids who are under 18. My mom found out, she was pissed. She was pissed.
Pissed at the mom?
Yes, because she didn't check with my mom. Wow. My parents, my mother in particular, was much stricter about that sort of thing. I rated R movies I rarely got to see.
So you got the infamous expressed written consent.
Oh, yeah. I can still remember. We went into the thing because I was like, how are we going to see this? Are we going to sneak in? She came with us. They said, 2 tickets for Good Morning Vietnam.
Yeah.
And the guy said, okay, can you sign that? And she signed a piece of paper that said, yes, I'm allowing essentially my children to go watch this movie.
Yeah,
and we went and saw it, and I'm no worse for it, I don't think.
I don't know. This is what we spent our permission on. Yeah, we could have seen a better movie.
Listen, I love Good Morning Vietnam. I watch that a million times over. I love Robin Williams.
Sure.
So again, but it's just so it is to say, putting these things doesn't assure anything.
Right.
At all. Right. In fact, I would argue there's probably kids who would hide it from their parents,
of course,
because it has the parental advisory sticker.
Yes.
I can remember having Soundgarden's Bad Motorfinger. And I let a guy, I'm not going to get into the whole thing, let a guy borrow it.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I didn't see him for weeks on end. And, of course, I have a handful of tapes, and this is one I want back.
Yeah.
Finally, I tell my mom, I'm like, hey, look, I let this kid borrow it. He didn't want to show it to his parents because he thought they would be mad about him having it or whatever. She went and told the mom. The mom freaked the fuck out and, kind of gave my mom a speech about how could you let your kids listen to this? Do you know he's talking about the Bible and rape by another monkey freak? How could you possibly? And my mom, of course, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh, fuck, is my mom now going to go, you're listening to what?
Yeah.
But no, she brought it back and said, here. She's like, she was not happy about you letting him borrow it, And I was just like, oh, I don't know, But yeah, I again, put whatever you want on these things. I don't know that it stops anybody from doing anything. What it does is it hurts the artist ultimately.
Sure. Ultimately,
it makes it harder for them. It turns them into pariahs. It turns them into bad people for doing nothing more than freedom of speech.
They have to walk around on eggshells at this point, because they can't create freely, you know, and I know we went over the whole separating art from the artist, but I think this kind of falls in line with what I was saying about how the art doesn't exist exclusively of the artist,
right?
Because something like this, would mean that we'd get the art anyway.
Yeah.
And if we were going to get watched by this group, by this watchdog group, basically, you know, then we'd have more sterile, bland art.
Oh, for
because they would have gotten their way, right?
I mean, now that you say that too, like I think about it, I was trying to think, like, is there any, Cop Killer might be the only one, right? Like you can't get it now.
You know, you can't. No.
Right? If you go buy that album, Cop Killer is not on that album.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
And he's never fought to try to get it out there.
No,
he's never fought. Like I'm surprised they've never done a reissue.
He's also Ice-T has said in his book, Tipper Gore is the only woman he's ever addressed directly as a bitch.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Which. That speaks for. I mean, you know.
No, of course.
Whether he's wrong or right, that is
No.
not to be discussed at this moment. But it's surprising because she is responsible for all of this happening and him being affected in that way with his art, ultimately his music.
Yeah, and for her to be, 22 members and she's singled out in all of it. Now, of course, she is the face, her and Susan Baker.
Yes.
But it is interesting that the one we remember, I guess having a name like Tipper does it. But it's very interesting that that's who we remember. And the songs, right, that come out of this.
Yes.
I mean, starting up Posse by Anthrax, like you mentioned the Ice-T song.
Mother by
Mother
Danzig,
from Danzig.
who was not even singled out.
No, but
not singled out.
But you talk about an artist, that, like as he says in that first video, is like, this is why we want to do this video. I don't have to get censored on MTV.
Right.
Right. And again, like censorship in general usually never turns out to be a good thing.
Not at all.
You know what I mean? It's like it's never the people you want censoring.
Exactly.
It's never the people you want censoring. Yeah. And again, what bothers me the most is, so you drop the ball as a parent, Susan and Tipper, and the rest of us have to pay?
Well, you know what's funny? Originally, this starts off by them doing the thing they were supposed to do anyway, which is, and maybe the story gets a little blown out of proportion, but they are the ones who are supposedly listening to these songs and listen to the lyrics of Darling Nikki,
right,
and say, oh, this is overtly sexual. Maybe my daughter shouldn't listen to this.
Well, I mean, as I understand it, it's the exact opposite. They listened to it and they didn't know.
Oh,
which is even more of a...
Because
I can't imagine Susan Baker was sitting around rocking Madonna. I'm not surprised she didn't necessarily know those songs. The problem, as I understand the story, she buys the Purple Rain soundtrack for her daughter.
Yeah.
It's a rated R movie.
Yeah,
That's already been taken care of. That alone should be your clue. And more importantly, and it's interesting you say it, because this goes... D. Snyder, in an article I read, he's talked about the fact, listen, it's something I still do to this day. Now, this article was, a while back. He said, my kids were really into Tenacious D. They loved the album. I bought it for them. But there was a song on there, the song Fucking Her Gently. He's like, my youngest daughter, she was way too young for that.
Sure.
So what I did is I made a copy of the CD minus that song, and I gave it to my kid. So she could listen to the rest that I felt was appropriate for her. That's what I'm supposed to do as a parent. You should have listened to the Purple Rain soundtrack first and then gave it to your daughter.
You
didn't buy a Barney album.
And the places I was looking at. And maybe this was done after the fact to kind of like retcon the whole story.
Sure. Oh, I'm sure.
But I did come to understand it as Tipper Gore buying the album and listening to it with her daughter.
I've heard that version too, that she drops the needle while they're in the room together.
Right.
And again, even the age changes in certain things I read.
I heard like 11, 13.
Right.
In some
He's
cases,
much younger. So. Yeah, it's a fish story that suddenly, exactly.
Purple monkey dish.
Right. But the point still remains.
Yeah.
When you buy these things and you're like, when my kids were younger, there were certain things that I didn't play Slayer in front of them. I didn't play stuff like that because I personally didn't feel those were necessarily ones that I wanted my younger children to listen to. Now, that's not for everybody. If you want to let your kids listen to Slayer, let your kid listen to Slayer.
Right.
I just didn't think it was appropriate. That's just the way I saw it. There were certain movies. There were certain anything. Because they're my children. I'm not making that decision for your kids.
It's funny that you say this about the movies. The UK famously had the Video Nasties, which, was a set number of movies that just you could not find.
Right.
You could not see these movies at all.
Most of them because of violence, right?
Violence,
okay.
Yes. Yeah. Some of them were kind of, sexual in nature, but you're right. Violence for the most part.
Right.
And in some cases, violence against animals.
Yes.
Right? Which Fair enough.
Yes.
So the only thing that did for me was I told myself in my young little, mind, when you're able to, you're going to watch these movies. Right?
Yes.
And you're going to make up your own mind.
Yes.
Because I'm not going to go bug my mom and say, hey, can you get me Cannibal Holocaust?
Right.
Can you get me Cannibal Ferox? Because I want to see what the hap is.
Right. Last House on the Left, Mom. Go get that for me.
Right. Which, honestly, a great movie, but it is brutal as hell.
It's hard to watch.
It's a hard watch.
Yes.
So if you decide, hey, maybe my kids don't watch this one, that's great.
Yes.
You're making the parental choice.
Absolutely.
Not fucking Tipper Gore.
No.
From her high seat out in Washington, D.C.ville.
Because again, to me, because you made a mistake.
Right.
And more important, and even combined with that, because you had to have an uncomfortable discussion with your daughter about what masturbation is.
I did see a thing pop up on one of the social media platforms where I guess kids were coming home with pamphlets. And these pamphlets were describing the sexual organs of both girls and boys, right? We're using kind of binary contexts here, so let's just use that for now. And the parents of some of these children were outraged. This is not what I send my children to school for. Really? Are you fucking serious?
It's just
because
science.
This is the education that the kids back in the Tipper Gore days should have been getting at school, and then maybe have questions for the parents, because you don't expect your teachers to answer these things.
Right.
You come home and you ask your mom, hey, what's like a virgin about? Well, let me tell you. The thing you learn in school, this is why this comes into play, right?
Yes.
It's conversations that the parents don't want to have.
I think in a way doesn't that show what a relationship you actually have with your daughter, Mrs. Baker?
There you go.
That your daughter heard a thing and said, hey, I can go ask Mom, what is this? I want to understand that.
Right.
But you don't want to have that. She should be listening, playing with dolls, as she says. And it's like, yeah, I don't disagree. So why are you letting her listen to a radio station that's playing like a virgin?
Yeah.
And again, this idea that, and I just think about, like, we're hearing it now too, is like, man, in this day and age, trying to keep up with what kids are watching. I don't disagree. I mean, my kids are all older now. I didn't have the full weight of social media and the internet with my children. Yeah. But also, my kids didn't get a phone until they were probably 13, 14. They didn't have a computer of their own. Yeah. So it wasn't, and I don't think they're any less for it, but we also communicated with our children. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, I remember a friend one time, he let his children kind of watch whatever. Yeah. And I would tell him, no, that's not something we like. And they're like, what would it hurt? And I'd always say to them, what would it help? You know what I mean? Like, they're not hurted because they didn't get to, it doesn't hurt them that they didn't get to watch Silence of the Lambs. Sure. They'll watch it sometime. It doesn't have to be today when they're 6. You know what I mean? Like, so to me, it's just like, but again, that's a decision I make for my kids. You can make that decision for your kids however you want. To pretend also that seeing scenes of violence couldn't have a detrimental effect on children. No, of course. I think it could definitely be there. But again, then do your job as a parent. Right. If you believe those things to be true, then that is part of being a parent. I don't know what to tell you.
I got to be honest. I was the person showing my kid brothers like all the horror movies.
Sure.
But I also think for the most part, they knew that this was fantasy. Sure. Horror being like an adjacent thing to fantasy, right? And the reason I kept coming back to it was because of that feeling of being scared.
Sure.
Right? Because at the end of the movie, we could always remove the VHS from the VCR, put it away in alphabetical order, mind you, and go watch our cartoons, go read your comic books, and you're still alive the next day.
Well, I think the other part is think how you presented it.
Right. Yeah.
This wasn't like, hey, man, you're going to die if you watch this.
Exactly.
It was like, dude, this is so scary and crazy.
Right.
You should watch. Okay, you set the tone. Yes, now, again, could it have some ill effect? Look, there were some movies that we let our kids watch, and they're like, oh, shit, they got nightmares. Damn it. Okay. I didn't. I mean, Lord of the Rings. I had the spider thing. It really fucked up my kids for a little bit. Oh, sorry.
Interesting. Yeah.
Shit. It wasn't on purpose, but we thought they'd dig it, and they did. They liked all of it, but that kind of scared them. Okay, so then you have the nights where they won't go to sleep, and you tell them you're gonna be okay. Da 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 da. And that's just part of it, man.
Sure.
But I think that's a lot of it too. Is how do you present these things to your kids? By the way, she comes in and says, "Mommy, what's a virgin?" And you go, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god."
If you panic,
now
you know you're failing as a parent. Right.
Like she's gonna freak. And it's just like these are natural things. Granted, yes, I would like my 14-year-old, not my 7-year-old, maybe to ask me about virginity. Sure. But at the same time, like these are things. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah. Be more vigilant. And look, no matter how vigilant you are, some things will just fall through the cracks.
It's gonna happen.
It's gonna happen. And especially now in the internet age.
Now, yes, more so I think now than ever. What's the series on HBO that was like super graphic and about like teenagers basically?
Oh yeah, I can't with Zendaya.
You know which one?
Euphoria.
Right? Euphoria.
I mean, I don't know. I don't watch that shit.
Well, like even stuff like that, I would say it's I think important to have there as an option, maybe as a soft introduction to these types of conversations.
Sure.
Because I know just approaching your parents might be tough for kids in general, right?
Yes.
Especially for any type of like sexual in nature.
Of course.
Like, hey, I'm feeling kind of weird about these things.
Of course.
How do I, and I'm not saying Euphoria is like the end all be all
No,
answer
no,
for
no,
shit
no.
like
I know
this,
what
or
you-
even like the movie Kids, which was a big one when we were younger.
Yeah.
Right. But if you have questions about drugs and like sexuality and stuff like that, you can kind of soft launch these conversations with things of this nature. I think so anyway.
I think it's a
tool. It's basically a tool. Right?
Again, this is about knowing your children.
Right.
Look, there are some kids who, when introduced to violence, it does trigger something in them that makes them want to be violent. For others, it doesn't. You have to understand your children. As you talked about before, when like the Columbine, it's video games.
Right.
Well, now they still try to do. Video games are in so many American homes. They're so ubiquitous. At this point, you might as well blame toasters.
Yeah.
So it's not video games that are causing kids to be violent. It's not music that's necessarily doing this. There's something else going on. Right. Millions of people bought those Marilyn Manson albums, and they didn't go in their school and shoot it up.
Right.
99.9% of the people who bought a Merciful Fate album has probably never even been arrested.
Right, exactly.
Well, half of them are probably virgins. But anyway, just to say, the irony that Frank Zappa and Dee Snider are clean, sober, married, have children. Like, they're not wild and crazy dudes that they think they are just because their music may show that,
When you put it that way, Bob Denver was the wildest one of that bunch.
Well, he did experimental planes. He did like to smoke a little weed despite Rocky Mountain High not being about it. Yeah. I mean, this guy, a little bit more of a rock star in some ways than those two were.
The other two guys.
Yeah. It just, again, it's blanket thinking instead of looking at things individually. And it's just, and then that's the other part is, as Zappa points out, is like this bureaucratic bullshit that we're going to start. So every album has to come before a board that has to. Do you know how many albums get released? Do you know how many interpretations of each fucking song?
Right.
Like, we're never going to release an album. You're going to have to put it out for 2 years in this little haze.
That censorship becomes a creativity killer.
Absolutely, and to some degree, you like you said, you already mentioned this. There were labels that suddenly were dropping artists because they felt like, well, I can't sell their records anymore. Interesting. The girls, one of the girl I kept reading from the Mary Jane Girls, she really believes that song was going to be up for a Grammy, but because it got the Filthy 15, they did not put it in for the Grammy nominations. Therefore, it didn't.
So there was one label that did create a group that was anti-censorship. I think they were called the Gold Mountain Record Company or something to this effect.
Okay.
They did have, because there was the moral majority.
Right.
They came up with the musical majority, which was supposed to combat all of this type of stuff. I don't know that they were necessarily any successful to any degree.
I got you.
But, it shows that some people did have some sense on their shoulders and were like, hey, man, this doesn't fall on us.
Yeah.
As you're saying it should.
Yeah.
This falls on you.
Yes.
You're the parent, you're the mother, you're the father.
Yes.
That's your kids. we're not giving them the money to go buy this.
Right.
It's up to you to
Right.
kind of, again, parent your children.
I mean, so we know that drugs and alcohol are bad for children. So am I never allowed to drink or smoke weed because it can be bad for we can extrapolate this. We keep going.
Sure,
Like it's insane to think that this could be detrimental to children, so therefore we have to get rid of it. Right, but adults enjoy it. It's not for children. So let's just allow it to be out there, and then we'll try to keep it from kids. Like, we don't let kids buy cigarettes. We don't let kids buy alcohol until they hit a certain age. So on and so forth.
They can't buy, I mean, they can get it online now.
Sure.
Like at that time, they couldn't buy, a pornographic video.
Absolutely right. They'd be behind the counter or whatever.
Behind
So
the
it's
counter,
like
right.
it's just to say it's like the hypocrisy of it all and the bullshit of it. This like I've said many times, this Trojan horse of protecting children.
Right.
And again, meet the new boss, the same as the old boss. This has been going on in perpetuity. People find something they don't like, and a thing that I find the most ironic is just like I said with the Satanic Panic, and it continues on this. Tipper Gore likes rock and roll. They're Elvis fans. They're Beatles fans. She's a fucking deadhead. But now we've reached a point where now you've become your parent. Yeah. This music's dirty. Not my music. My music was just fine.
Right.
And it's just like, you can go back and find plenty of songs back in the day. The innuendo was a little stronger because you couldn't get away with as much.
Yeah, right.
But it was still there. But they didn't mind because that's the shit they like.
Right. Yep.
This
100%.
is stuff I don't like. So now it can go away because that's ultimately what we're saying.
Yeah.
Stuff like a cult, like I said, anti-Christianity. Well, last time I checked, that's not the only religion in the world. And it's not the only religion in America.
To this
right.
group, so,
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. Like the focuses shift, as time passes. I think for the most part they do stick with music though, because music is one of those things that hits quicker. It hits a lot more, like at the same time.
Yes.
It
is something I've always wondered, and maybe this will be something we maybe make an episode or talk about.
Yeah.
Why is it always music and not movies? Movies don't get me wrong. Movies haven't got away with it, but it's never the same. Everything Cannibal Corpse is talking about is in 50 different movies that are in a theater right now.
I do have an idea about this, and I would love to explore this more. But I do think with music, it drives, and because it's the youth kind of driving this.
Sure.
It's much more of a cultural impact with music.
Okay.
Because, music comes from necessity. It comes from struggle.
Sure.
It comes from the need to be creative, which a lot of people don't always have that avenue. Mm-hmm. So when you suppress something, one of the I think one of the easiest ways to get that out, those frustrations out, is musically.
Sure.
Right? Because music allows for any sort of creativity.
I definitely agree.
And so music, like with the later musicians and artists that the PMRC went after, which was like the hip hop and rap groups.
Yeah.
That was all the youth. They didn't want the youth to fall prey to this music, right?
Absolutely.
Because they saw what supposedly, according to them, it had done to the black youth.
Right. Not in my backyard.
Not in my backyard. Exactly. The NIMBYs. Right?
That's it.
So I think that's a big reason why. But yeah, I would definitely love to explore that more.
I always just find that interesting.
But yeah, because movies, they come and go, they get replaced.
Yeah.
Where music lasts.
Maybe,
I know we have the everlasting movies.
But I mean, just as explicit as masturbating in Prince's song, you can literally watch a movie where a woman masturbates.
Yeah, of course.
And it's like, you're not. But you call that art, and this is filthy 15. Which one is it?
Right.
And just like I said, just in general, I always find that very interesting.
I also think because and again, going back to the youth
Please.
thing, the youth can encounter music on their own, whereas a movie with something else, if a parent finds out that there's these graphic scenes in this movie, you're definitely not going to see that.
And it goes to what they try to say. This is why a rating system will work, right? Because I can keep my kid from watching a rated R movie.
Right.
And again, on that surface, just that alone, I think you get a lot of people go, well, yeah.
Right.
Well, why not?
Yeah.
But there was so much more underneath it that was, once exposed, you went, okay, this was never about.
Yeah, once those tendrils get cut off, they floundered and they saw that they were jokes. It's funny, again, that I think this country, and this did end up affecting other countries, as did the satanic panic, and I think it's funny that this country always needs that scapegoat. It has that thing. I don't know if it's an inner thing where, like, we need to find a bad guy. right?
Well, it's easier than looking in a mirror. It's easier than half the people who want to sell you a scapegoat. They're the reason you're probably where you are.
Yeah.
You know,
it's just weird, and like both of these conversations we've had, for some reason, this country really loves doing this to itself.
Well, I mean, people love boogeyman. Again, one of the toughest things I think people in general is to look in a mirror and say, what can I do to improve this situation? What did I do to make this situation happen, maybe? And realize you probably have a lot more to do with it than any scapegoat I can give you.
Yes, completely.
But you know, when you're sold a scapegoat or given one and you can go, whew, I don't have to be me anymore.
I'm in there free and clear. Right.
That guy's fault. Woo! That made it a lot easier.
Something that I know I touched on the last time was the need for people to get therapy if they feel they need it. You know, this is, I know, another difficult conversation, especially when you have it with people who you love and trust. Maybe that's the scenario.
Sure.
But if you don't happen to trust, like, your parents, which in a lot of cases people don't, telling them that you need therapy, they'll instantly think it's going to be a blame game against them.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And so...
certainly certain generations.
Right. You know, and so I think even therapy gets, you know, vilified.
Yeah.
And it did for a long time.
For sure.
You know, I know maybe some people make fun of it now, but I really think it's a helping tool. And
the stigma of it isn't what it once was, for sure.
Yeah. So, you know, and because a lot of these kids looked to music as an outlet, whether it was just to hear something that they could maybe not express their sexuality or their anger, but it was like, oh, this person is angry for me, or this person is talking about the things I would like to talk about, but in a way I can't, and maybe in a more creative way. And so now I feel I don't have to at this moment in time, you know?
Of course, it's also an assumption that half of these people even understood what any of these songs were about in the first place.
That's, I think, the bigger.
Like we did an episode about lyrics in music and how many songs people don't really understand what that song is actually saying.
We could have covered the Filthy 15, right?
It was just like, and even the Filthy 15, some of those songs, they misunderstood what those songs were about.
Right. I mean, She Bop would have been the first one.
So it's just like, you know, again, it's like you're giving everybody a lot of credit and no credit all at the same time.
Exactly.
They're like, oh my God, everyone's going to know that this song is about this, but they're not smart enough to know how to keep that away from their children.
It's, I believe that's the Streisand effect now, where people complain about a thing that nobody else was complaining about. And now it's a thing because they were complaining about it so much. You know.
Well, they definitely made a mountain out of a molehill. They you know, and that was because of the power and the influence of the men they were married to.
Right.
You know, when it was a small PTA thing, you could brush that off and say, yeah, we'll get back to you later. But when it's powerful men in Washington who can make laws, and one of which you really would like them to do so you can make more money.
Yeah.
Suddenly it becomes a much bigger deal.
And much like a lot of these other moral panics, money becomes one of the driving forces, right? How much more of it can we get, which leads us to, you know, situations that are all too familiar. So what do you folks think about the people affected by the PMRC? Because I know there's still a lot of people to this day that, you know, kind of put their sights on Tipper Gore. And she did have a bit of a change of character at one point, because I know maybe people forget she was or maybe still is a Democrat. At that time, right? So
this was a bipartisan thing. This was not a Republican.
It was a very black eye, as it were, for the Democratic Party. But you know, once she got out of this whole PMRC biz, she did like lead campaigns into helping like the homeless and like stuff like this, you know? Beneficial things.
Well, look, I don't think these are horrible people necessarily. I think they're misguided.
Misguided, for sure.
I think they made something out of nothing.
You know, and I think this is definitely a stain on, you know, Miss Gore's...
it's what people will mention when she passes. It's the first thing that'll be on her obituary.
Yes.
You know, wife. You know, well, maybe wife of Senator.
Ex-wife.
Ex-wife of Senator so and so.
Yeah.
You know, but and again, this is not to shit on her or her family, because God knows marriage and children are tough.
Sure.
But she is divorced from her husband, and I believe one of their children got in trouble with drugs.
Right.
So you know, this irony of her protecting, and you know, it's the carpenter whose house is fucked up. And yet can fix everybody else's. You know, and again, marriage is tough, raising children, stuff happens. Nobody's perfect at it.
Of course. Of course.
But it is kind of an ironic thing to look at when you consider that the other people who were involved, that didn't happen in their life.
Right.
Yeah.
So, again, what do folks, maybe a bunch of the folks out there listening to this might agree with what we think about the PMRC, which I'm not in favor of. No. I don't believe in censorship to any degree. But how were folks affected, if at all? Like, did you try to buy something and get denied because of the sticker? Or did the sticker make it more tempting to you? I'd like to hear what people out there think.
And denied not only by the person selling, but did you have parents that checked your records as you walked in the door?
Yeah.
I had some friends who definitely, if they walked in with a record like that, no, that's not coming in here.
Right. Yeah. So that I'd be interested in hearing what folks out there think. All that said, what have you been watching?
Actually, watched quite a bit this week. Weirdly, my music and my movie watching kind of coincided in ways where it was like groupings of either like same director or same artist.
Okay. All right.
I watched two big Coen brother movies that I really love. Well, one I actually bought because I can never find the damn thing. I rarely buy movies. But I was just like, I was so tired of not being able to find it. And that's Miller's Crossing. It's my absolute favorite Coen brothers movie. I finally just said, fuck it. I bought it on Blu-ray and I watched that. God, I love that movie. I can watch it over and over and over.
Yeah.
It's my favorite of theirs. The other one that I watched was Fargo. I forgot how good
Fargo's
that is.
A great fucking movie.
It's so weird even by today's standards, and the comedy is so their comedy where it's not really funny, but you can't help but laugh. I think it's the closest one to Raising Arizona in the way it's funny.
Interesting.
That weird kind of, why am I laughing at this?
I know it's like dark comedy.
Yeah, but it's also like, it's like they don't tell jokes necessarily.
Yeah.
It's just their antics or the things they're doing. And the accents too. And just I don't know why. Just kill. Oh, don't you know? Oh yeah. Okay. When everybody describing Steve Buscemi's character, he looked kind of weird. What does that mean? I don't know. I mean, just weird. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
The other one I watched that ended up being the same director, which actually one I didn't realize until I this movie called Rebel Ridge, which I highly recommend. It was kind of this buzz movie that happened on Netflix last year. It's fantastic. It's kind of, in many ways, it's a retelling of, I would say, First Blood, which is a fantastic movie, very different from the rest of the Rambo series.
Yeah.
But essentially, guy goes into town. He happens to be African American. Guy goes into a small town. He's there to try to bail out his cousin.
Yeah.
And he deals with civil forfeiture, which is a weird thing to put into a movie, but man, they do it in a really great way for a lot of people to go, wait, you can do this?
Yeah.
But really good action and a really cool story. I really, really liked that movie. Turned out, though I did not know it when I went and watched this other movie, directed by the same guy who directs a couple movies that I love. One I know you and I have seen. We went and saw it together, actually. Green Room. Remember that one?
Yeah.
Well, that guy, I believe it's his second film technically, is a movie called Blue Ruin.
Yes, I know Blue Ruin. Yeah.
So he also directed Rebel Ridge.
Yep.
I did not know that. Blue Ruin is great. I really, it's an interesting film, very short, but really good. And essentially, it's a revenge movie by a guy who's inept. Right. It's not Taken. He does not have a special set of skills.
No.
He has no skills.
Right.
And yet, he is bound to take revenge on people that have wronged him. And it's just one of those movies where you find yourself going, would I have done that? Oh, I don't think I would have. Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Do that. Oh, smart move. I think I would have done that. Yeah. It just
learn as you go.
Yeah. I mean, this guy he's a nobody, and he's just decided he's going to take revenge, and you're like, boy, are you fucking this up?
Yeah.
But it's just very interesting and a really good movie. I would highly recommend it. And again, very short. It's only about maybe like an hour 20. You're in, you're out.
Yeah.
But I really like that one.
That's cool. I'm kind of surprised you hadn't seen Blue Ruin, but I'm glad.
Oh no, I've seen it before. No, I watched it again. Yeah, this was one of those ones.
Gotcha.
When I saw Green Room, I was like, who is this guy? And then I found out, there's this movie called Blue Ruin that he directed. Oh, okay. So I checked it out. Yeah, it just happened to be on Amazon again, and I was checking it out because I hadn't seen it in so long. And then when I saw Rebel Ridge, because I looked on his IMDb to try to see what else has he done, and it said Rebel Ridge. I was, what? Get the fuck! I watched that last year. I love that thing. And now watching it again, I do see some of the little similarities in it. The other two I watched this week. 25th Hour. I like that one. Spike Lee directs it. He didn't. I don't believe he wrote it. It's an adaptation of a book with what's his name? God dang it! Fight Club and American History X. Why am I Norton? Ed Norton.
Yeah.
So essentially, he is about to go to prison. He got caught on a drug charge, and this is his last 5 hours before he goes to prison, trying to sort shit out on his way out.
Cool.
He goes to spend the nights with. It's also, I believe, I could be wrong on this one, but it definitely takes place in New York. I believe it's the first movie shot in New York after 9/11.
Oh, shit.
So that, in a way, is also a character, if you will,
like
in
looming
the movie.
in the background, kind of.
It's always. In fact, there's a part where one of his best friends is Barry Pepper. In his apartment, he overlooks the towers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
he can see the holes where they're doing the construction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Really good movie. Again, one of those ones, too, where, like I said, Spike Lee did not write, but he directs. Yeah. Those are always interesting because he brings his style, but it's not his writing, you know? But I really like that movie. It's very good. And it's Barry Pepper, Ed Norton, and, we lost him. God dang it. Wow, I'm blanking on these. Big fat white guy, Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're in it, and Rosario Dawson, always wonderful to see her.
Yep.
And then there's people sprinkled in it. They're like, oh, that guy. Hey, no. It's a good movie. It's another one of those ones where it's like he's not like a hardcore thug or anything like that. It's just this. What would you do in your last 25 hours until you're about to go to prison for probably about 5 to 10 years?
Yeah,
you know,
that's cool.
Yeah, it's a good movie. I'd highly recommend it. And the last one I watched, kind of unfortunately, had some high hopes and. Boy, were they dashed. The Accountant 2.
Oh, The Accountant was such a great movie.
I loved it.
Fun.
And The Accountant 2 isn't horrible.
Yeah.
It just, it has moments.
Everyone comes back, right?
Everyone but the girl.
Okay.
Kendrick. She is not back.
All right.
The action's good in it. I love seeing him with Berthol because now they're, instead of meeting at the end of The Accountant, spoiler alert, they are now going to be in it together the whole time.
Right.
It just felt it's a very convoluted story in a lot of ways.
See, man,
it's a bummer because the first one, I'm with you. That felt like one of those movies, too, that kind of took me back to, we've talked about this, when I was a kid in HBO Friday night, and you get this just kick-ass action film. It wasn't necessarily a great movie, but you loved every...
It was like the modern-day Iron Eagle or something, right?
Exactly. And it just felt like one of those where you're like, good, we're back to these, where it's just like, yeah, it's got a good story, but this is just going to be some kick-ass action. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then it's just like an interesting, like, okay, so he's like autistic, and the way they told that story, too, where you're like, why did he end up like this? How does this happen? No.
Yeah.
Tricking you with which brother you think he is, and then at the end
who
realizing.
that voice is,
yes.
that keeps calling him.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was all, it was really cleverly done.
Very much so.
I really enjoyed it. I loved the fact that, like, you have what's his face, Ben Affleck.
Ben Affleck, yeah.
Him and John Berthol are brothers, and
Yes.
then when they find out that they're going against each other, it's like, well, what do we do now, right? Team up and then just cause all the damage.
And that's
in the world.
essentially that's what this is ultimately. Is like I call my brother and say, hey, I need help,
right?
And now he's going to help. And again, it's very, I don't know. Like I said, good action in it. I didn't hate it. It just,
it's sad.
I think I brought stuff to it because I expected a lot because of how much I liked the first one.
Well,
So,
I think it's tough in films like these.
Oh, sure.
Because there is something that precedes it, right?
Oh, for sure.
You want more of the good things in that first one. And
Yeah.
I don't know the creator. I haven't
No.
seen it.
I know what you mean.
It was on my
It's
on my list, but
Yeah.
I am also bringing expectations to this movie.
And understandably so, right?
Yeah,
yeah. And I also think it's one of those. How many movies get made and nobody thinks there'll be a second one?
Right.
And then they throw a shit ton of money at them and say, "Hey, let's do number 2," and they're like, you know what I mean?
Scramble for a story,
right? Which is like when we talked about like the John Wick movies. You go, who knows? Maybe they never thought there'd be more than one. But the fact that they were able to accomplish 4 of them and they're all really good.
Speaking of John Wick,
please.
apparently the director is not a big fan of the Continental series.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I just saw that headline and I was like, should I read this and see? You know,
Yeah, you don't want to. Yeah,
but apparently that's the thing, right? So take that as you will.
Yeah. So yeah, that was it. Accountant 2 was probably the last thing I watched, and I was like, yeah, no. It was just I came home and it was like right there on the Fire Stick, going like today. I was like, oh, I was like, Christmas came early, everybody.
Yeah, right.
You know, and it's just like halfway through, it was like, Santa left a turd. You know. So, how about yourself? What you been?
I've been watching. So we still doing Hacks.
Okay.
Some of these later episodes are a little bit slower. Still funny, but a little bit slower.
Okay.
And, you know, it's kind of taking Amy and I out of the story just a tad bit. But we're still in it for the long run.
I gotcha.
I don't know if this is the last season for Hacks, but we're in it to win it.
I gotcha.
End,
No.
The Last of Us just finished up.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Fucking fantastic. And you know, I still kind of chuckle at myself when it ends on such a cliffhanger.
Oh yeah.
And people get pissed, and I'm like, it's because they're gonna tease this one out.
Oh,
you know?
I mean, I think we talked about it last time. I think now they're taking, it might be 4 seasons,
Four
right?
seasons, yeah.
Where it was going to be, you technically do it in 3, but it's like, guys, once something starts making money, they're going to chop that shit up into. I just saw with Stranger Things, they're going to put out the first part in November, the second part on Christmas Eve, and the finale on New Year's Eve. You're like, wow, you're going to make
what a way to fucking stretch that shit, right?
You know? But they're also like, you know how much money we make from this fucking shit?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Last of Us was a great fucking watch.
It was.
We're also watching a show called The Studio.
I've heard good things. This is
Seth Rogen.
Yes, Seth Rogen.
Rogen, yeah.
Yeah. Apple TV, yeah.
Apple TV.
Yeah.
He's becomes the head of a studio.
Studio, right.
And he's charged with making a Kool-Aid movie.
Okay.
Because of the success of Barbie. Right? And
yeah.
Well, it's funny when that gets brought up and like pitched to him. I guess the guy that owns the studio now is Bryan Cranston.
Oh, okay.
And I gotta tell you, they're doing such a fucking great acting job. I cannot tell these voices.
Oh, interesting.
From the
Okay.
get-go. Like I had to stop and be like, "Who the fuck is this?"
Okay.
And Amy would tell me like, "Oh, you know him. He's in this and this and this."
Right.
And I'm like, "No shit, Bryan Cranston is in
Interesting.
this?" Yeah, it's so good.
I've heard good things.
It's really fucking
and the
good.
cast looks another one where you're like, wow.
Cast is fucking great. It's funny, you know, and it's Seth Rogen. So
Yeah.
you get Seth Rogen being Seth Rogen, which I think he's a funny guy.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, so we've been watching that. I actually, in preparation of these episodes, the Satanic Panic and the PMRC one, I watched an old movie called Trick or Treat, which
Ozzy's in that, right?
Ozzy and Gene Simmons.
Gene Simmons, that's right.
So Ozzy actually plays a preacher.
Yeah.
And like the guy on the cover looks like fucking Blackie Lawless.
Right. Oh, yeah.
It's fucking hilarious.
Which is the kid from Skippy, right? From
Skippy,
Family Ties.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, never seen the movie.
See, it's funny you say this shit that you're not into horror because you know.
I do know. I've never seen the movie. Honestly,
but yeah, it's a cheesoid.
Oh
fucking
yeah,
movie.
yeah, I've heard.
Yeah, it's fucking hilarious. It's more comedy than horror or anything like that. But for some reason, was always in the horror section. Right?
Does he get? Is it that he gets possessed?
He gets possessed.
Okay. Or I just didn't know if it was possessed or he just churns because he's in heavy metal.
Gets possessed.
Okay.
Yeah, so
as one does,
as one is wont to do when
Yes.
listening to any of these songs.
Right.
That and I actually took it upon myself to watch Terminator 1 and 2 again for some reason. I just felt like watching these.
Well,
great
you don't
movies.
need a reason.
Well, this is true.
You said it. It's Terminator 1 and Terminator 2.
Yeah,
We're done here.
Yeah, we're done. One is a horror movie. One is an action movie.
Yeah.
Up to you to figure it out.
Yeah,
It's pretty easy.
That's
No,
that's.
but yeah, I thought that was a good.
Those
good roundup of the whole gamut there.
Fantastic
Kind of
movies.
dramatic and shit. But yeah, what are you listening to?
Much like the movies, I fell into holes where it was just like I'm listening to kind of everything from those artists. Tad, I listened to every album from Tad. I can never get enough of him. Just everything I love about music, riffs, it's tongue in cheek. It's just just the sound, the sonicness of it. I absolutely love. Another one was Celtic Frost.
Hell yeah.
I fell in and it was just like, fuck it. Actually inspired by, I watched the MDF performance. It was on YouTube.
Nice. Yeah.
Amazing. As a side note.
Funny you say that because I listened to somebody because of the MDF.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I mean, as a side note, too, again, I'm sure the internet blows this up bigger than it was, but the idea that anyone complained because Triptychon played an all Celtic Frost set.
Did you see that statement he put out?
I did, and I really felt like, Mr. Warrior, you needn't say anything.
Right.
Any person complaining about this, I would trade lives with you in a heartbeat if this is the worst part of your day, is that to some degree, I was kind of thinking about this. Maybe I'm a little off, but heavy metal's David Bowie is going to play the classic Celtic Frost set. Yeah. By the way, from start, I mean, granted, no Vanity Nemesis, and you're not going to get Cold Lake. I get that, but essentially, the cream of the crop of Celtic Frost songs he's going to perform for you live, and you're bummed.
Yeah, right.
Now,
right.
I will say, watching that video, anyone who was bummed wasn't in that audience because they were going absolutely fucking apeshit.
Mexican radio gets played and people lose their shit.
Yeah, I mean, dude, it was. I mean, unfortunately, no Mexican radio. I wish it would have been nice.
All right.
That would have been cool. But
that's the one song I was waiting for.
Yeah, he takes a moment to even read St. Mark and the other guy. I can't think of the other person. Hey, real quick, without them, and obviously, then he does for Martin.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I was just so blown away. I was like, oh, that's it. I'm listening to Celtic Frost.
See, that's cool. That's cool.
That one I went down. The other one, technically, because I am a bit of a poser fan of The Clash, but for me, The Clash are the first record and London Calling.
Okay.
Those two are just perfect. I just, every song fucking hits. I fucking love. I was listening to the first one and I said, well, fuck it. I got to listen to London Calling then afterwards. Because as soon as it was done, that's all I could think of. So
I do have to say Sandinista is a great album.
I am trying. I actually just put Give 'Em More Rope as a playlist. Yeah. I'm going to try that one again. Yeah, the others have just never really connected the way those two do. And they're so fucking good. Sure. Both of those records. Just the song structures, the things they're singing about, it's just amazing. I really love The Clash, but mainly I love those two records. That's if cool. I'm being 100%.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Another one it wasn't so much of a whole, but Ulver, Blood Inside just turned 30.
Yep.
I went to the record store today and I ended up they had Perdition City, so I bought that.
Nice.
That's my Ulver. I love the black metal stuff, but the latter Ulver is really more of the electronic stuff. When they're doing like Julius Caesar, stuff like that really does nothing for me. But when they're doing the electronic stuff, the last one I got was like Drone Activity. I really love that one.
Yeah.
I also love the one. I don't even think it's a word. Maybe it is. The A, whatever. It's a white cover. AV, whatever. I love that one. But like stuff like Julius Caesar, a lot of that just kind of goes over my head.
I like Julius Caesar.
I know a lot of people do. And people whose taste in music that I very much respect, you being one of them. I don't know. Just never does anything for me. But I love when they get really electronic and stuff. Perdition City, Blood Inside.
Yeah.
The book, William Blake.
Yes.
Touch of Melancholy. I love all of those records. I fell down that one a little bit. And then Steve Von Till's new one.
Oh, yeah.
Gave that a listen. Fantastic. Guy's never released a bad album. I really love the progression. He's adding a lot of that ambient stuff to it, where before it was mainly acoustic stuff, So I like to see that kind of progression. That was really good. I really like that.
Yeah.
The one discovery, and I'm finding out I'm way behind, but not surprised, at least on this one, was a band called P.M.R.C, Ebony Tower.
Oh, yeah.
I threw it at you because I was like, you probably heard it, but nonetheless, I was like, as soon as it came on, I was like, wow, does this have some mayhem, fucking D Mysterious vibes going on here? Yes. I was like, I gotta send this to Nick. He's probably heard it, but just in case.
Yeah, that was so. It was good being reminded. Wow.
And I'm like, where the fuck was I? How did I miss this? Because then you go looking for it, and it's like, a lot of people had it on year-end lists, and on. Like, all right, well, hey, better late than never, But other than that. No, again, there's stuff in between, but those were the big ones I especially went down. Like I said, Tad, Celtic Frost, those were nice little rabbit holes to go down and just kind of like, God damn, I forget how much I love these records, cool. Man. How about yourself? Anything new and exciting?
Yes.
Cool.
Like you, I watched some of the MDF performances.
Right on.
there was a Mexican death metal band, one of my absolute favorites, Cenotap.
Okay.
They played a set, and I thought it was fucking amazing.
Right on.
You know, fucking, they sounded great. You know, fucking tight and all that shit. It's cool. Aside from that, I came across a band called Bong Coffin. So I know we're laughing. I know we're laughing.
Stoner name generator at work again.
Well, I know we're at that point where names are getting a bit ridiculous. With the witches and the bongs and the coffins.
As long as you back it up with great music, I don't give a fuck what you call yourself, ultimately.
Speaking of,
please,
not that witch.
Which witch is which?
Which witch? This band put out one song that I know of so far.
Okay.
On their Bandcamp, and I think maybe their Spotify, and holy shit.
Yeah?
Heavy in all the right ways.
Right on.
It's got enough of the stoner kind of stuff that I really enjoy. But it's great. It's fucking great. It almost reminds me of like, kind of like Bongzilla-ish.
Okay.
You know. Yeah, I know, right? I mean, when you're bong anything, it's gonna remind you, right? Yeah, right. But the music was super fucking good. Super good. So Bong Coffin was the name. I forget the name. It was like 4. I'm not even gonna try it.
All right.
Yeah, it was
but
such
Bong
a fucking
Coffin.
Bong Coffin. Yeah, and I actually linked it on my Facebook.
I'm just realizing the kind of double entendre of that. Bong Coffin and Bong Coffin.
You know, I don't know if I'm high right now, but
maybe I'm reading into it. I too think that The Shining is just telling me that he, faked the moon landing. So maybe I'm reading too much into it.
That's actually very clever, very astute of you, Mr. Sullivan.
They just hit me. Maybe they're far more clever than I thought they were.
Exactly right.
They're not just a shitty
band. Also, because Amy and I attended this show on, at the recording of this, it would have been last week, but we went to go see Severus, Glassing, P.M.R.C, and Dragged into Sunlight.
Right.
So I started listening to all of the music of theirs that I could find. I gotta say, Severus, I love this fucking band.
Yeah, they're good.
I don't know what it is that they do for me, but I love just their combination of death and doom.
Yeah.
And when they play, they always show LA a lot of love.
Right on.
Which, for some reason, that just hits harder with me, because I do love the city. But Severus, I think they're on $20 spin.
Yes, that sounds right. Yes.
Yeah, so they fucking great show, and I've witnessed this band in smaller venues, and to see them at the Regent, fucking awesome.
Right
fucking
on.
Props to these guys. I think they just came back from a tour, and I found out that one of their guitarists has another band called Ancient Tome.
Oh, okay.
Which I haven't explored that band, but that's on the chopping block for next week.
Right on.
Glassing was a surprise.
Okay.
I did not know about this band.
Yeah, it's a name I've heard, but I haven't checked them out.
The best way I could explain it is a hopeful, more frantic "Today is the Day."
Oh.
Yeah. Because they came out blasting. They came out with the really crazy guitar, playing the heavy fucking bass. But wow, what a performance.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in some part, and I say hopeful because some of those guitar melodies, they feel like if they were played in any other context, they could probably be like shoegazy music.
Okay.
Where it sounds beautiful,
all right,
but because it's got that backdrop of the heavy, ugly, sludgy bass and the blasting drums.
Right.
It's just a beautiful combination.
Okay.
So Glassing, I think they have 2 albums and a couple of EPs.
Okay.
Fucking great. P.M.R.C, black metal, doom metal combo. I love them. You kind of know what you're getting, but also to see them play on a slightly bigger stage was cool. But Dragged into Sunlight.
Yeah. No.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a fucking pummeling my ass got.
Yeah.
For some reason too, this was at the Regent Theater here in beautiful downtown Los Angeles, scenic downtown Los Angeles. It was absurdly loud. And I'm not complaining. That's not a complaint. But when every band on the bill is using the 808s and that moment hits, even if I have fucking earplugs in, my core is being activated by these 808s.
I hear you.
And it's being followed by blasting
Oh, yeah.
and screaming and just frantic everything.
Especially with them, Dragged is like it's just once it goes, it's gone.
It's nonstop.
There's rarely a pause.
You feel exhausted.
Yeah,
afterwards, right? Like, why couldn't the PMRC look at Dragged in the Sunlight and be like, that's overtly sexual?
It's turning me on, baby.
Exactly, right? Yeah, so they were fucking great.
Yeah.
So I've been listening to them nonstop this whole past week. And the last one that I could find was he's a Tuvan singer. I've listened to him before, but I have two. So Tuvan singer, he is from Southern California, but he lives up in the Pacific Northwest now. He goes by the name Soraya. So Soraya was actually on one of those like America's Got Talent type shows.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
He dressed in a costume
Okay.
and got booed off, unfortunately.
Okay.
But he does the throat singing, super ambient music. He did a stretch of shows with Bauhaus over a year ago. Yeah, so fucking Soraya is fucking awesome.
Right on.
The last one that I have is, I came on these by complete accident. David Eugene Edwards of the band Woven Hand.
Oh, okay.
And Al Cisneros of Sleep and Ohm.
Yeah, I saw you post this just recently.
So they released 2 songs that they put out. I forget the name of the second one, but one of them is called Pillar of Fire.
Okay.
Along my internet sleuthing of these songs, I came across a person saying these are being made for the movie adaptation of the Cormac McCarthy book Blood Meridian.
Oh, okay.
One of my absolute favorite stories by him.
Right on.
I am in my Cormac McCarthy reading phase at this moment.
Right.
So this came out at the perfect time.
Right on.
The songs are that dirty, kind of westerny, sleazy, but also sounds like it's very fire and brimstone, you know?
Okay. All right.
Beautiful fucking songs, the 2 of them.
Okay.
Very ambient, very, I don't know, it's fucking, it's great. It's
All
very
right.
great. But if you can find them, David Eugene Edwards and Al Cisneros of Sleep and Woven Hand, yeah, two songs
Right
that
on.
supposedly will be on a Blood Meridian soundtrack, which if that's the way the music's going to go, this is going to be the greatest movie ever. I know it in my heart of hearts.
Right on. Right on.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's all I've been checking out.
Right on.
Again, as usual, folks, we know that, like Aaron said before, raising kids is tough. You know, some conversations might be difficult, but I think it's worthwhile having them. And if the parents aren't fully up to having them, one of the things that we touched upon in a previous episode was talk to somebody who knows better than you maybe.
Yeah.
Do some research. Get educated.
Yes.
Because with education, you don't leave stuff up for chance.
Right.
You don't leave this responsibility up to anybody else. And I think ultimately you have a better connection with your own family.
Yeah.
And you're all...
You don't have to know everything.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's a reason to go look and try to find people who do know these things.
Right.
But it's your obligation as a parent. If you know, just because you don't know doesn't mean you should stop there.
Right.
Try to find it out, man.
Find
These
it
are
out.
kids.
Yeah. And we have, you know, fucking telephones that can send space shuttles into space.
Absolutely.
Right. So use them, get smarter, read a book, and we'll catch you next time.
Right on.
Hey, folks. Thank you so much for checking out the rehearsal room. We super appreciate you spending time with us. If you have any questions, comments, or want to yell at us for any of the takes we've expressed in any of these episodes, you can contact us by emailing us at therehearsalroompod@gmail.com. All one word, therehearsalroompod@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, and now on Blue Sky. Also, if you have any recommendations for any movies or any bands you might want us to check out and give a listen to, feel free to send those in. We always accept submissions. Or if you have any shows coming up that you feel we might be interested in checking out, let us know and we'll give you guys a shout out. But thank you for checking us out, and we'll catch you next time.